Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings of this life, including our ability to meet in freedom this evening. Guide us in our thoughts and deliberations, that we may make the best decisions for current and future residents of Morrisville. We also ask for your comfort and protection for those throughout the world who are working for peace, and to protect our first defenders, first responders. Protect those in danger and comfort those who are suffering. We ask these things in your name. Amen. So before we proceed, welcome Rob as a full-time member. So Sanjay, our alternate, will be a voting member because we still do not have our official ETJ member on board. So our first item then is to look at the agenda. Any changes to the agenda from your side, Courtney?
No, sir.
And the board?
No.
Finding any changes, I entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda for the March 8th, 2018 meeting.
I have a second for that motion.
I second it.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The agenda is adopted. Thank you. Next item is our approval of minutes. Any changes or corrections to the February minutes?
No.
Entertain a motion then to approve the February minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the February minutes.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Thank you. So we'll zoom ahead to item 7, new business.
There we go. Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I see a lot of new faces on the board. So I'm Brad West with the Morrisville Planning Department. And tonight is the first official land use plan update meeting. To give you a quick background, town, as I'm sure you know already, has a land use plan in place. By most accounts, it's been well implemented and well received. And in fact, it won an NCAPA Marvin Collins Award along with the transportation plan. But that was in 2009. So it's been quite a while since we've had a fresh look at this plan, and it's in need of a comprehensive update to kind of bring it with the times. And as per the UDO, as the Planning and Zoning Board, you all will be responsible for delivering a draft plan, an updated plan to Town Council. And fortunately, will have lots of help from town staff, but not only us, but our consultant partners from Housel Levine, who are based in Chicago, have flown out with us tonight. And since you will be spending a lot of time with Housel Levine over this process, I'm going to have them come up and give a brief presentation about who they are, some of the projects they've worked on in the past, and just a general overview of the land use plan update. And they'll also be at the end of their presentation a small feedback activity that we're going to engage you guys on, and as well as a sort of Q&A session, brief Q&A session, maybe 15, 20 minutes. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Michio Murakishi and Nick Davis from Housel Levine.
Good evening. My name is Michio Murakishi with Housel Levine.
My name is Nick Davis from Housel Levine.
And as soon as we find a mouse, we're going to fire up this presentation.
While you're doing that, welcome from Chicago.
Thank you.
That's it.
You brought the cold with you, huh?
Yeah. All right.
Well, first of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity to meet with you tonight. What we're going to do is go through a couple of different things. First, we're going to talk a little bit about the firm. We're also going to talk about some of our experience, and then Michio is going to walk through the scope of work. So I think if at any point you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, we'll kind of go through this, and we'll have an opportunity to talk afterwards. So as we said, our firm, Houseo Levine Associates, we specialize in community planning, urban design, and economic development. Really any aspect of planning is really in the purview of what our company does. Our staff is made up of, I would say, primarily planners entirely. Michio and I have specialties in urban design myself. Michio has a background in economic development. So the reason we were picked for this project was we just saw a really good blend of our backgrounds and what you're trying to accomplish with the land use plan update. So my name's Nick. I'm a principal at Houseo Levine. I've been there for over 6 years. Michio is the senior associate on this project. He will be managing all aspects of it, working with myself and also John Housel, who will be here for outreach, public engagements, and really working back from the office on helping formalize a lot of the recommendations, planning policies, those types of things. One of the things that we're very proud of is, on our projects, each project that we start on, we have a unique approach, a different style for each one of them. But in 2014, we were recognized from APA for Emerging Planning and Design Firm. And it was a big deal to us because we're up against a lot of big firms, up against a lot of different styles. And one of the things that they had said that they found, us deserving of this award was our approach to outreach, our approach to innovation on every plan and technology, which I know, talking with staff already, this was something that, they're very interested in seeing. And so our approach and our different techniques for, how to use Esri software or planning tools will be a big part of how we start to produce these plan recommendations. So some of the projects that I'm going to talk about, as I said, each project is unique and it does have its own approaches that we need to consider. But what I want to go through are different process approaches that we do for projects. And as we get closer and closer to, and here we are tonight kicking it off, this is a big part of what we're going to want to do is what's the right approach, what's the right process. And you'll see through these different projects that each time it can be very different, not just the look and the style, but also the approach. These are just some of the examples of land use planning experience that we have across the country. I think at this point we've worked on over 100, 150 comprehensive plans collectively in the office. Even though we are a small firm, we're probably doing more comprehensive plans across the country than really any other firm. Like I said, each one of those has a unique approach. I'm not going to name all of these, but, a lot through the Midwest. We're out west in Colorado. We're doing work on the East Coast in Connecticut. And the reason that we think that's important is it gives us the opportunity to bring different ideas, different approaches, new techniques, something that's working in Colorado or something that might be working in, Michigan or Minnesota. It might be something that you want to consider as part of some of the challenges that you're facing here. So this is a project that we had done, the Imagine Flint project. It was a comprehensive plan that was going to lead into a zoning update. So as part of the Imagine Flint project, this was obviously a very big lift. They were having some significant challenges about losing their population. What do they need to do to really make that community whole again? So we started a very aggressive outreach campaign. Ultimately, we ended up speaking to over several thousand individuals. We had workshops that had up to 600, 700 people attend. And again, this was all so we could get the input that we needed to develop our plan recommendations. And it was something that was coming from the community that was very important to us, that it wasn't just us telling them what they need to do, but that it was us helping them, tell that story and really get the future that they're hoping that they can achieve. So these are just some of the collateral materials that we prepared for Flint. This is something that we'll be doing for this project as well. One of the biggest issues that we were facing in Flint were the land use components. So this is just an example of the process that we took to get to the land use plan, which ultimately became a place type map. I'm going to see what this does. Back up. So the community input, that's on the left. We had these traditional dot map exercises. So we're at the public meetings. People are putting stickers on the board. I want to see a green neighborhood here, a commercial node here. This transportation corridor needs to be looked at. And we're talking like stickers. This is a very low-tech outreach. Then the next graph over shows us starting to take that information, coupling it with information that we've been collecting from our online mapping source, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later, and bringing that all together, compiling that information, creating heat maps. And for each one of these land use designations, we started to identify where future uses needed to happen. And ultimately, it leads into this place type map. And what I found very fulfilling was when we took this back to the public, people could say, I remember having this conversation about this little pocket here being commercial. It was really important to the neighborhood, or, expanding the downtown boundaries this way. So this process allowed us to talk to as many people as possible and get as much input as we could, and it helped to develop this place-based land use map. What's even more challenging, but we were able to achieve, is these became the zoning districts within the community, which having this land use plan set us up to have a more successful zoning approach process, which was something that comes with its own inherent challenges sometimes. This intensity wheel, the idea of being able to switch a community's current land uses to an adjacent one, was a really complex issue that we wanted to visualize. So this just gives you the kind of overarching look at, if you are a green neighborhood now, you could become a different use, one that's adjacent to it, maybe a traditional neighborhood or community open space. And that was true for any one of those uses. These are just some of the examples of what those place types look like. So each place type was visualized. We gave them a land use map, photos of what it could look like in the future. We developed 3D models of what those spaces should look like, gave them best planning practices and recommendations. And then from those, we developed a series of sub-areas which were given a lot more detail. And in those sub-areas, we did a lot of before and after imagery, gave specific recommendations for changes, which, again, this is something we'll be talking about as part of the land use update here. In Hudson, Ohio, we did a comprehensive plan that was coupled with a sub-area for a downtown. Hudson had a significant single-family population, and it was trying to build up its downtown. They had a small pocket of a downtown that they had recently done, and they were moving into phase 2. So one of the things that we had done is, how do we tie this in with the larger Parks and Rec plan that they wanted to develop, and how do we start to expand that downtown? You can see the current downtown is about half of that blue space, a little bit of the brown space, and they wanted to expand it all the way up to the rest of the blue and the yellow. It was a pretty big development opportunity, but it came with a lot of challenges about growth. What do those policies look like? What could that space ultimately look like? We helped them program it out, gave them market realities. It was based on what could really be built there, not just physically, but is there interest from developers or investors? And then ultimately we created a visualization that gave them a sense of what that could be, and this was something they could go to the public and talk about and show it to developers and investors what they were trying to do. Oak Park, this one was a very analytical approach for a comprehensive plan. It all came back to everything wanted to be in an implementation matrix, or everything had to be driven by metrics or benchmarks. This was a big concern for this community. It was a big outreach effort. So the plan itself is shaped around all the different outreach opportunities that we had, what those efforts look like, the scale of them. So the bigger the green spaces, the more input we were receiving because of the event sizes. And that led to a plan that was based on all these different events. I'm going to shift it down a little bit. This is when it starts to scale up. So it went from what were these issues and our priorities, and we started actually developing plan policies and took those out to the public for review. But it led to a plan that was really built around these summary matrix. So all these recommendations were broken into then what's the objective, what's the recommendation type, who's going to be responsible for it, what's the metric to measure whether or not we're actually achieving these recommendations in the near future or the long term. Yeah, you can just get an idea. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is map.social. So this is an application that we built in-house. It allows us to set up a browser-based mapping program that anybody from the public, you yourselves, anybody that wants to be a part of this land use plan update conversation can log in, create an account. It's very quick and easy. And once you've set it up, they're able to do dropping points, drawing polygons, drawing lines, maybe tell us where a community asset is or where a redevelopment might be or a desired use that you want to see. You could add a photo, you could add, links, whatever you might want to do to give us an idea of what could happen in a certain area. We'll give you project spotlights so you can see how many maps. It's all open, so everybody can see everything. So you can see maps, you can see everybody's comments, you can see who's contributing. These are customizable legends, so we're going to work with staff. We're going to work to make sure that what we're preparing for this will allow us to identify the issues that you want to identify or the opportunities that you want to know about. I was going to see. as you can see, if I clicked into somebody's map, you could see a photo, if they took a picture of a specific issue, what their comment was. I could upvote it, downvote it. And this gives us an opportunity to do some outreach with groups that maybe sometimes can't make that 6 to 8 o'clock at night meeting on a Thursday. That's just not working with their schedule. What's really interesting is we can see when people are making these maps and they're at 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon, but they're not at that typical window. So it's just another way to cast a net and make sure that people are able to participate. The other thing that's great about this is it is browser based. You can do it on a mobile device. You could be out in the field or out in the community. But what's great is on the back end is this is built on an Esri API. So every point that's being added is going into a GIS database. So this is data that we can actually analyze pretty much instantaneously. So the minute someone adds a point, you can, staff's able to download it, we're able to download it. You can start creating heat maps, you can analyze this information, you can run it against or enrich data that you already have. So it's a great way to start to enrich some of the information that we're collecting, in these traditional outreach opportunities and start putting it to physical spaces. Now, this is just showing you different maps that people had created. And, this just runs an algorithm to see what kind of conversations are being had. So in this one, community was one of the highest things that people are talking about, or campus or spaces. It just kind of at a glance, you can see what's going on. So I'm going to hand it over to Michio. He's going to walk through the scope of work.
Thanks, Nick. So I'm going to quickly walk through the scope of work. Unfortunately, my slides will not be as visually appealing as Nick's, so I'll try to move through it pretty quickly. So for Morrisville's land use plan update, we have a 7-phase or 7-step process. And as you can see to the right in italics, we've got the scheduled timetable for each of these phases. So we begin project initiation. That's where we are right now. The next phase, which we're going to get into very soon, will be the community outreach and engagement, followed by our existing conditions analysis. And actually, we're starting that work right now. So those phases 2 and 3 are concurrent phases in some ways. Phase 4, where we start to develop community vision and goals. We realize we're not starting from scratch. You have your 2009 plan. We're going to, as part of the existing conditions analysis, take a look at that, determine, working with you, working with staff, determine, what we want to keep, what we want to revise, what we don't want to keep, and so on. Phase 5, sub-area plans, we'll be looking at 2 areas of the town in a little more detail, kind of zooming in a little more, if you will. Phase 6 would be the community-wide plans and policies, and then Phase 7 would be the final plan documents and adoption. So overall, it's probably going to be an 18 to 24-month process. So, as I mentioned, Phase 1, this is where we are right now. 1A, this morning, we had a very productive meeting with your planning staff, Courtney, Ben, and Brad. We also went on a driving tour that they took us on, very informative. Task 1B, we're live with it right now. It's happening. In April, we'll be coming back for a town council workshop. And then we've got some administrative type tasks that are part of this phase as well. So phase 2 is community outreach and engagement. We've scheduled these tentatively for May. 2 big ones. We'll have a community workshop. I think Courtney will be working with the chamber to increase turnout at a business workshop. And then we'll also be doing a lot of stakeholder interviews and focus group discussions when we're back here in May as well. So we've also got map.social, as Nick was describing before we started discussing the scope. And as you can see here, 2J, you've got this staff coordination meeting number 2. We have 7 staff coordination meetings, so we've got 1 at each step of the process. And then we've also got a total of 7 meetings with you. That would include 4 meetings like this, and then we've also got 3 land use update presentations, which will be at a meeting at the PZB, where we'll be able to give you folks an idea of where we are in the process, as well as the public. So phase 3 is the existing conditions analysis. We are, as I mentioned, taking a look at your past plans. We are doing a demographic analysis, and demographic analysis is particularly important for a community like yours that is growing so rapidly. I mean, it changes from week to week. So we're excited to start digging into that. And that will all be synthesized into an existing conditions report. So as I mentioned, we will have several meetings with you. The next time we speak with you formally, we'll be reviewing the findings of the existing conditions analysis. So phase 4 is the development of a vision statement and community goals. We look at visioning as both a process and a product, both equally important. The process will be largely conducted during a visioning workshop, as well as a town council workshop. And I think we even have target dates for all of these events that we were able to establish this morning. So all of this work will be summarized into a vision statement and a memo that summarizes goals and preliminary policies. So the sub-area plans, we will be developing vision statements as well as goals and recommendations specifically related to the sub-areas. We'll also be preparing 3D visualizations. So I think Nick showed you a slide with some visualizations we did for Flint, and these are very helpful. These are a way to make kind of planning vision more easily accessible to folks when they can see the kind of 3D build out of some of these plans. So we're excited to get into that work as well. And then all of these plans will be tied to market assessments. So, staff has made it very clear that it is important that all of these plans be grounded in some sort of market reality. So phase 6 will be the draft plan, land use plan update. So this will also include a new future land use map, as well as an implementation plan. Another thing that I'm very excited about, and I think staff is as well, is that we'll be preparing a fiscal impact model that can be used by staff even after the plan's complete, to inform land use decisions. And this will be a turnkey model that, it will have utility hopefully long after we're done with this plan, our work is done with this plan. So finally, phase 7, this is when we tie it all together with a draft land use plan document. We will then, once you folks have had a chance to review it, as well as the technical review committee, we will be presenting this at a community open house where the public will be invited to ask questions, make comments. This is where we get to put the final product on display. So that brings us to the workshop activity. But before we start that, were there any questions that any of you had about either our firm or this process?
I have a couple, but let's start with Harleen.
I was just going to ask, who comprises the technical review committee? Is that on your firm? Is that your firm that does the technical review?
So I think in your prior, your 2009 plan, you had a plan advisory committee, and this would be similar to that. We haven't discussed the exact composition of this technical review committee with staff yet, but I'm sure we'll be doing that fairly soon.
I have a couple of questions, but let me first start with just the planning part, the project plan that you just laid out. And again, I'm coming from a IT background, and when we do a project like this, you typically start with a vision, strategy, goal, and all of that before you go into as-is analysis. What I'm seeing that you are starting with as-is, and then later on trying to do the vision and vision analysis or vision definition. Don't you think that would anchor you with existing issues as opposed to what's the community vision, and therefore, once you define that, then you can get from as is to the to be?
Boy, I don't know if I have a good response to that. It's just the way planners have been doing things for the past 50 or so years. Perhaps that approach, your approach would be, the IT approach may be more effective. I don't know. Nick, did you?
Yeah. So I guess the way I would say this is when we approach these projects, we say planning needs to do three things. So the first thing we need to do is establish where we are, what are the issues. The next thing is, what do we want to move towards? So that's that visioning process. And the last thing is, how do we get there? So that's the process that we've outlined here. It's a process that we've done, like I said, on over 150 comprehensive plan projects, and one that we really use across the board. The reason why we do that is it would be easy if we started with vision and goals first for us to start injecting our own ideas or thoughts. And what we want to do first is here, I think it was the first three phases of this project, we're not doing any recommendations. We're not inserting any of our ideas yet. This is about hearing from the public. This is about doing our reconnaissance, reading past plans and studies. We want to learn as much as we can, as soon as we can, so then we can start moving into that phase. But that existing conditions report, next time we meet, that's going to be us coming back to this group saying, we want to make sure these are all the issues, opportunities, existing conditions that are out there. Do we agree on this? If we do, knowing this and having this information, that's how we'd like to move forward to start working with the community on visioning and even our own ideas starting to come in. But I think that's the first step, is to know everything that we can know as it relates to the land use plan update. So hopefully that helps.
Or maybe
the only reason I asked is we used to do what you just mentioned. Take what we have, figure out what the issues are, and then go figure out what it needs to be. And one of the things we have always found and we have done lots of $1 million projects and $1 billion projects, and what we have found out is that by doing that, you don't do transformation. You basically do an incremental change based upon the problems you have identified, as opposed to doing, something that would last for 15, 20 years. That's essentially the difference.
Yeah, and that definitely makes sense. I guess what I would say to that is we're not making incremental changes to the land use plan. We're going to make changes to how this community is approaching the land use plan. So it's not looking at the old land use plan and updating it. I know that's the title of it, but I can promise you our approach is going to be where there's really good ideas in the land use plan, we're going to carry them forward. But where we think we can bring in some new ideas and more transformative ideas, we're going to. And that's a big part of why I think we were selected to be the team to help the community do this.
Okay. Another question, maybe this is more the technical question, was around, you mentioned map.social. Does that reflect the current infrastructures, buried pipelines, buried electric wires, whatever it may be? Does it do the public, when they go to map.com, map.social, have visibility to the constraints a given landmass may have based upon what's the flood zone in there, what's the restrictions underlying that may or may not be conducive to, let's say, commercial use or any other kind of use they may be proposing?
Okay, so that's a really good question, and it's something you could do, But for the way that we're going to use it for this project, they wouldn't be seeing constraints like applied as an overlay. So we wouldn't be showing them where floodplains are or where maybe the connections aren't made. We don't want to limit people's kind of vision of what they'd like to see or what they think the problems are. This is just one piece of us trying to get a sense of what everybody in the community thinks the issues are. But to your point, when we deliver the existing conditions report, those are issues we're going to flag and a conversation that we can have with the public. Again, when we go to that community workshop, we'll be able to, I think, instead of treat it like a brainstorming session, we wouldn't be stopping them from thinking beyond that. Well, if there's no roadway connection there now, then this will never work. It's like, well, that's something we can plan for. We could add that roadway. And not everybody's able to, kind of think past what's there. Kind of to your first point, think past what the issues are now. It's like we're talking years ahead. What could this be? But that being said, staff will be able to overlay that kind of information within their own GIS software and see where those limitations are and see where those problems are. And that's a conversation that we'll be able to have both with the public, but also with staff and with you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Angie. Rob.
Scope-wise, we're focused on the land use plan itself and most likely not delving into the details of the UDO? Or is there a bit of a mix there?
So they may make recommendations that would change the UDO, but no, they would not be making any specific changes.
And that's an intentional break. Since we're doing planning first, we're talking about land use. But we would, as a part of this, be looking at where we think issues might be occurring in the UDO based on where our recommendations are leading. But it's first, let's establish the vision, the land use, and then the next step, probably one of our first recommendations would be you need to update the UDO to reflect, if it needs to reflect what these recommendations or policies are trying to get to.
Lee.
So you kind of touched on this. It looks like there could be a fair amount of overlap with transportation, especially when you get into the map, not social. So I guess we're sort of in the middle of this whole transportation plan thing that's kind of gone off the rails and come back on the rails, whatever. Aren't we just opening that can of worms like wide back open again that's going to completely conflict with what we're doing?
No, I mean, people may draw lines on the map, and that's fine, and that's part of the process. But this is really land use.
Right.
And it's completely separate. Not to say that people won't comment and make the
because that they will.
Today, they are two separate documents that comprise the comprehensive plan.
Okay. And I guess sort of the same thing with like the downtown or the town center plan, which is kind of far along. You're just going to, I guess, take kind of what they're working on with Armada Hoffler or whatever, and then just sort of build on that with recommendations, or how does that work exactly?
So there is the town center plan that was adopted in 2007. So the vision of the town core has changed. That would be identified on the plan, and that would in essence match the boundary as part of the DFI. But then there'll probably be a little further discussion of what happens then on the boundaries, redefining what supports, for example, some of the parks identified in our current town center plan, we know no longer will be parks, and so we're having to revise some of that stuff. So what is the outcome of this will supersede what's in the current plan. So basically it's going to dissolve that plan and become a new one. That's going to be a case for a couple of different plans. Pulling in new information and updating it where appropriate.
All right. Anything else?
Can I ask a follow-on question to what he just asked? So, based upon their land usage plan, it might happen that there is some more development recommended or whatever. That could in turn impact the transportation plan. So, is there at the end of this, I see this being a 2-year, to me that's a very long period for planning. But at the same time, at the end of 2 years, is there a feedback that would then ultimately go into perhaps updating the transportation plan at some point?
It could.
Okay.
But keep in mind, too, the entire scenario planning process, which is one of the appendices in the plan, was land use plan analysis. So there was a preview component because we recognize the linkages between the two for some of our key areas, and that's kind of the Crimin Extension area, Phase 1 and Phase 2, as well as the town center. So there was a very considered effort kind of move forward, knowing that there would eventually be going to the land use plan.
Okay.
Well, I'd again like to thank you for coming down from Chicago and apologize that we don't have warmer weather for you. So,
It's warmer than it is at home, that's for
very
sure.
good. Impressive presentation, and some of your experiences amazing. Perhaps one of the most, or perhaps a unique thing about Morrisville is that it has expanded so fast, so quickly. Therefore, most of the development is relatively new, and we don't have much space left. So unlike some of your projects, which might have been sort of greenfield, or others like Flint, for example, which might have been areas that were crying out for redevelopment, how do you see this as being different from anything else that you've done before?
Yeah, I mean, I can point to several communities where, like I said, each one has just its own issues or its own constraints. Like we're doing a project in Bentonville, which is kind of a similar. Now they have more room to grow, but as part of our plan, we're saying don't. We're saying to concentrate on infill, target the core of your community first. But same thing, they're growing very fast. They have opportunities. Like every month that we go down there, there's all these new buildings, new structures, new homes being built. So it's about controlling that growth, making sure that it fits in with the character that they expect the community to fit into. And then where they can, they'll start expanding out. But right now, it's really constraining it in. So I do think as we were doing the drive around tour today, it's reminiscent of projects that we've worked on in the past. The trap is to say you're just like this one community and this is how we're going to approach it. But I can say that we have so many different experiences from these different communities that we'll be able to craft, I think, the right approach to help us answer the issues or the questions that you may have. Right now, it's just learning what we can and kind of taking that all in.
But I would say, working in a rapidly evolving community like Morrisville is exciting for us because it is not simply an academic exercise. These land use recommendations will have real implications and will be put to the test. So it's certainly a challenge and one we're excited to take on.
Very good. Reassuring answer. Thank you. I noticed, or I gather, Michio, that you have an economic development background. So
right.
That's something that you're going to bring to play on our planning, right?
Well, so I think that at our firm, as Nick mentioned, we are a community planning firm, an urban design firm, and an economic development firm. So we have everyone kind of has a superpower, if you will, at our firm, and mine happens to be economic development. But as Nick also mentioned, the bread and butter of our firm is comprehensive planning, land use planning. So all of our assignments are rooted in land use planning. So I think economic development, just like transportation, all these elements are interrelated somehow. So I think there will be, maybe indirectly, an economic development component or theme that might dictate a lot of what we end up recommending for the land use plan.
Okay. Very good. All right. I think we're ready for the project if it's not too intellectually demanding.
Okay.
So if it is okay with the board, we are going to ask for some feedback in the form of these comment cards. So what we'd like initially is for you all to rank your first, second, and third highest priority issue, land use and development issue facing Morrisville. And I'm going to pass out, Courtney actually will pass out these cards, pass out these pens. And we're going to take about, if it's okay, again, 5 or 6 minutes for you all to fill out these cards.
I get to see the list.
Thank you, sir.
Can I see the list?
Yeah.
Or is this an open-ended list?
That's fine. I've got paper I can write and give.
I can tear this in half and just write.
Yeah. Don't worry.
Highest priority, second highest, and third highest. It's just that.
And just so you can see, there's a 1, 2, and 3 on the back of them. There you go. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
Thanks.
So Brad, if you could just reiterate the instructions one more time, just so they can hear it again, please.
Yes, so if you could please rank, and again, as Courtney mentioned, they have a 1, 2, and 3 on the back of the card. Your first, second, and third highest land use or development issue priority facing Morrisville today. So something, and it's very broad. It can be whatever you think needs serious discussion right now. Can even be in place in Morrisville that you think needs a lot of attention. Okay, we're going to give you a couple more minutes. Apologize for not having the Jeopardy.
Strictly anonymous. You're safe.
All right, I'm going to come up and collect them here. And then we'll get into our second card exercise.
Oh, we have more?
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Keep this one.
Actually, yeah.
So,
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep them.
I'm going to keep her?
But if it's okay with the board, would you all mind reading a couple or one of maybe your highest priority land use development issue you think is facing Morrisville? I think it'd be good to just kind of air them out initially. If that's okay.
I thought this was going to be strictly anonymous.
Right, I know.
But I'll start. To me, the number one is there's no focal, recognizable town center. And I know we're working on that, but we haven't got there yet. Anybody else like to share their number one?
I'll share. I mean, mine is sort of, this, I said additional density around the town center, things that are symbiotic uses for the commercial and the retail there. I think right now it seems like we're just letting the same old, I mean, yeah, we have townhomes, but, you know, so.
Anybody else?
I'll be happy to share. From my balancing growth with the desire to maintain the community's desire of a small town homely feeling.
Mine is a lot like that one. I said controlled growth. We're exploding with townhouses and apartments. Can we handle all this density as far as roads, utilities, schools, etc.?
That's one number two.
So I'd say the opportunity for development and the density that we apply right now to the zoning, it forces us to expand and use all the land, as opposed to building even more density in a specific location so that the land is preserved for other uses later on down the road.
Sure.
And I think that limits our potential of the future.
There's that one.
So.
That covered that one. Over my number one was mostly covered. So my middle one was incorporate and add interconnectivity of roads. Not a new one for me.
So that's helpful. Thank you. And I think when we start moving into the community workshops, the business workshops, we'll conduct a very similar outreach to this. And I even kind of heard it among the group, where you're going to start hearing people say, "Oh, that was my number one," or "That was my number two," and that's good. What we want to start doing is, it's not necessarily building consensus, but making sure that people are aware that their issues are, many people's issues, or there might be an idea out there that, your top three don't even make it anymore because you're so interested in this other problem or this other opportunity, and that's great. That's how we start to, I think, have a conversation that, maybe in the past you weren't able to have. We did have two other kind of informal questions. You don't have to write them down. More just, curiosity or questions that we like to ask. The first would be, and I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to be quick. If, money wasn't an issue, okay, so you're in charge, you can do anything that you want to do. Is there a specific project? Is there something that you would like to see happen, tomorrow or start to put in place? So not a broad concept or recommendation, but like specifically I want to see, this use move in here, or I want this road built here, or, anything, just to kind of give us an idea what your hopes are.
Where do I jump in on that one?
Well, if money was not a constraint, then I would like to see all my roads be at least 4 lanes.
These 4 lanes, all of them. Okay.
All of them.
All right.
And this is thinking out 25 years ahead.
Sure.
Cary and Morrisville, Raleigh are now, number 5 fastest going city in the U.S.? So if that trend continues, we are going to be parking lot for the rest of our life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example. That's a large undertaking, but a very specific project. Anybody else?
I guess sort of focusing on that, this is off sort of topic. How many communities do you work with that have control over their roads, and how many don't? Because we don't really have control over our roads.
Yeah.
And we are also in a position where thousands of people from all around us come in here, and we can't control that either. So, I mean, that does sort of constrain things a little bit.
So in fairness, we have not talked transportation and our legal framework here at all with them. So you're kind of putting them in disadvantage. We've had a lot of ladies talk today with zero transportation.
Right, so that's the only thing I'm afraid of is that, we'll be coming from 2 different points. We literally can't do anything here.
Well, and I think
It will be brought up to speak to the existing conditions concept. So that's where they're going to get a lot of their information. But no, I mean, this is, again, Pipe dream, no money.
Pipe dream, yep.
What do you want to do?
Every new thing built or renovated will have solar, and will have 75% solar capacity of their annual usage.
Are there examples here now where that's being done?
I got it on my roof. I was the first installation in town, but it's cropping up in this area, except for some trees, which aren't a lot around in a lot of neighborhoods. There's no reason that solar cannot be incorporated.
No, that would be remarkable.
Yeah, we used to be incentivized for it. Now the state took that away. So
I got advantage of those, but
yeah.
But you were saying like a specific project. I mean, I don't know. I would definitely like to see something, which is starting to go with the town center plan. But I would like to see, something, continuing with that is, market driven. I mean, I feel like it is sort of a chicken and egg scenario. Obviously, if there was a huge demand, people would have flooded in here with all their money to build things. But on the other hand, banks are very risk averse, and so they're not lending on anything that's not your bog standard housing development. And so that's sort of difficult. I mean, I guess I would like money no object, to have something like that move forward that would actually hopefully start a critical mass where it would attract additional development.
I think to some extent to that point, if we have this problem that we can't ever solve of people coming through us, how can we use that to our advantage?
Make things they want to come to.
Like how can that be?
That's the land use approach. That
maybe we should be a place people want to come for everything, not just on their way to work and on their way home.
Sure.
Right, and maybe that's something that we have to adapt into our vision. Right, I don't know what that. I'm spitballing something, but what would that be, and how can we invest in that kind of opportunity? I think that's something I'd be interested in hearing about.
So that's great. So I think these are examples of again when we go out to the community. And have a much larger group, hopefully in that setting, or when we go to the businesses. These are the kind of discussions, the kind of ideas that we're hoping that they'll be throwing out there too. And ultimately, once we get through the existing conditions phase, we start moving on some of these ideas and starting to see which one of them, could pan out or play out in the future.
Yeah. The one last comment I would like to make is, what I would really like to see is, I liked during your presentation you talked about analytics, and now I would really like to see that the plan that you recommend has a concrete set of KPIs that we can measure against and achieve. If we don't have it, then it's just a plan on paper that we all know how those projects end up. But it needs to be fact based. It needs to be it needs to have a concrete basis of measurement of success. And how we can get there.
I can promise you that our recommendations that we draft are focused on, if you can't do this, then we're not going to recommend it, because it's doing a disservice within the plan. It's going to do a disservice to you, and it's really just bad planning. So that's very important to us to make sure that the recommendations that we provide or that we recommend can be done. So.
Right. They're going to be specific. They're going to be measurable. But most importantly, at least in my mind, actionable.
So I've got a question for Sanjay. What's a KPI?
Key performance indicators.
Key performance.
So in other words, if you define a plan and you say that I'm going to be 50% done by X amount of date, how do you even know that you got up to 50%?
Yeah.
Right. So you have to define these measurements that you can track against.
Yeah, and the way we would draft these recommendations would be to target more into, because in that instance, say you hit 49%, did you fail? And no, you didn't fail. You didn't quite achieve maybe the benchmark that you would have set for yourself, but the goal is that the recommendations that we provide are moving forward, are moving towards whatever we've recommended as like these goals and objectives that are going to set the tone for what each one of these chapters are going to talk to. So, okay. All right, well, that was great. I think we're probably out of time. I think we've
got one last thing we're going to need from you. Courtney has these actual cards, and what we're going to ask, and I know you don't have the current land use plan in front of you, so I'm going to call an audible and let you take these home and think about this. What you like the most about the current 2009 land use plan, and what you dislike the most about the current 2009 land use plan. So I'm going to have Courtney pass these around and take your time to kind of sit through the plan and let us know. And you can bring these cards back at the next planning and zoning board meeting, and Marty will collect them and give them back to them.
I know.
You can decide on enough to look through the current plan.
Oh, that's pretty clever on the front and the back. I like that.
So that's it. I appreciate Nick and Michio coming out and doing the presentation.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you.
You guys want these cards, or are we just?
I'm sure you can figure out my numbering scheme. It's on the front, or it's on the other side, I wrote.
Okay. Thank you.
So now we go to 7B. Start with Courtney.
Sorry, I was multitasking over here. Good evening, everybody. And so one, I want to say thank you for your patience and allowing us an additional month to bring you back a very comprehensive revision to the September draft. And this version is the September 23rd version. You will see throughout the presentation September 25th references. That's the old plan, draft plan, and this is the new draft plan. I do expect there'll be additional changes to it. Then we'll cover some of those this evening. But there has been a significant amount of changes. He's going to highlight all of those changes as well. He's going to provide an overview of the entire plan, the changes in each plan, all the new appendices, changes to existing appendices. He's also going to set up a framework for this board to continue moving through the process with a recommended schedule. And we've outlined all of our public input opportunities. Most of them we've nailed down the dates, times, and places, but you'll find a few that we haven't confirmed, but we put them up here as tentative anyway. Then we'll note the changes, and then we'll have a question and comment period. And what you're really going to notice over the next series of several weeks is several different blasts, email blasts and social media blasts, for different tidbits and little facts about the plan itself and different information. So you'll start to see some of that start to evolve in the next several weeks as well. But I'm going to turn it over to Ben. And again, thank you for your patience so we can incorporate those 700 plus rule changes to the plan.
Good evening. So we'll try and get through this as quickly as we can, but just fair warning, it may take a little bit tonight. But and also don't worry, we are not expecting you to have had a whole lot of opportunity to read the plan in depth. So this is just to give you a broad overview of the revised draft, and then set you up so that you have more time to read through and think about the plan, and then really start your discussion in earnest with public comment sessions as we move forward.
Very good. And maybe somewhere around 8-ish, we might take a break.
All right. So we'll start with our overview, and we're just going to go through chapter by chapter and appendix by appendix and give you an overview of each and an idea of what's changed from the September 25th draft. So chapter 1, of course, this is an introduction or the overview chapter. It provides an overview of the planning process, implementation, accomplishments, and changes from the 2009 plan, public engagement overview, and guiding statements. As we all know, it explains how we got here and what we've accomplished since 2009. As you'll see as you go through it and look at some of the accomplishments, we've accomplished quite a lot from the 2009 plan. We also included a table showing how the recommendations in this draft plan may differ from the recommendations from the 2009 plan. And finally, we include the guiding statements that guided all the planning process that were set way back at the very beginning of this, almost 2 years ago. And these are the 6 guiding statements that are in the plan that guided the process to develop the plan. And these can be found on pages 109 and 110 of the draft plan. Changes to Chapter 1 from the September 25th draft included adding the section providing an overview of what's changed since the 2009 plan was adopted, as well as implementation accomplishments that we've had from the 2009 plan. We also included a table providing a status update on projects that were in the 2009 plan and how they may have changed in this draft plan, and we revised the layout on some of the pages to improve the overall readability. Chapter 2 is the existing conditions report, and it's divided into land, people, and transportation sections. In the land section, we provide an overview of the existing land use and zoning, development constraints, and existing community facilities such as parks, greenways, and community centers. In the people section, we talk about the demographics of the town, provide information on population growth and characteristics, and the commuting patterns that we have, and all this was developed from census data. Figure 2-15 in the plan is new, and it's a map showing where Morrisville residents travel to work based on that 2015 census data. And then finally, in the transportation section, we provide an overview of the existing transportation networks, facilities, and characteristics in town. And Table 2.1 on the slide there is a breakdown of the existing land uses in town, so you have an idea of what all information is in the plan. A number of changes were made to this chapter as well from the September 25th draft. And you'll see we added the new commuting patterns map. We updated multiple tables and graphics to improve legibility, and in some cases turned what was just text in the September 25th draft into graphics, such as the graphic you see on your screen. And we revised the layout on some of the pages to improve readability.
All right, so I just got a quick question. So is it page 2-15 or 2 through 15?
2-15, sorry.
All right, so I'm looking on 215. I don't see a map.
It's figure 2-15.
Okay.
Let's figure 2-15.
We ready to move on to Chapter 3?
16.
Okay.
18.
All right. In Chapter 3 is our roadway chapter, and it includes committed or funded roadway improvements, as well as recommended improvements for thoroughfares and intersections, as well as some recommendations for future road extensions funded by both NCDOT and the town. As you'll see in the chapter in the list of committed projects, we have over $230 million of committed road improvements already that are shown in Table 3-1. Chapter 3 also includes a street hierarchy, and so the draft plan classifies every road in town based on its function and characteristics. You'll find on pages 3-4 through 3-6 the street hierarchy for Morrisville. And as you'll see on the slide there, our hierarchy, we break it into major thoroughfares, minor thoroughfares, collector streets, and local streets. The Chapter 3 also includes recommended road improvements and includes recommendations for thoroughfares and intersections throughout town. Thoroughfare improvements are specified as either widening or access management on pages 3-7 through 3-8, while intersection improvements can be anything from signalization to access management to adding or extending turn lanes. And page 3-9 includes lists of intersections and potential improvements. Chapter 3 also includes some recommended road extensions, or what we are calling connectivity enhancing projects. And these projects and the related recommendations are detailed on page 3-10 of the draft plan. And finally, Chapter 3 concludes with more detailed information, specific recommendations for 5 strategic corridors: Town Hall Drive, McCrimmon Parkway, NC 54, Airport Boulevard, and Morrisville Carpenter Road. And this strategic corridors information are on pages 3-11 through 3-21. And you'll see on this slide, we pulled out the future street hierarchy table that is in the plan that shows the cross sections and the related street classifications that apply to those. And for all of our cross sections, for all of our street classifications, we provided primary and secondary cross sections. This chapter had quite a few changes from the September 25th draft, and we'll go through those now. For intersections, we added the table of intersection improvement countermeasures that was requested. Actually, was based on a request by this board as we were going through the draft plan before. We also removed committed intersection improvements, and we added new intersection improvement projects as well. And again, that was based on a lot of the discussion at this board. For the road connectivity projects, we removed that map, again, based on discussion with this board. We also removed committed projects, and we removed Green Drive extension, again, based on discussion by this board. And then we added conditions for several of the road connectivity projects: Crabtree Crossing Parkway Extension, Stockton Gorge Road, and Millicent Way. And again, that was all based on conversation and discussion at this board.
What page are those conditions on?
I just saw them a second ago.
That I don't have offhand, but it's
310. No, yeah, 3-10.
310.
yeah, 3-10.
And the intersection improvement countermeasures. What was that exactly? Was that like what people do against the improvements we make? I mean, it's just a term that's used, but essentially it's the toolbox of intersection improvements we can do. So, and then for the strategic corridors, one of the things we did do that you'll notice is and it's both in the strategic corridor section, and then also again you'll see it in appendix B and C on a few of the roads, again based on discussion that was had at this board. We did provide some potential 6-lane cross sections for future bus lane service. Again, noting that those 6-lane cross sections would only be for buses, the additional lanes.
Can I ask you one more question? So, some of these countermeasures that we have here, do we have a number of potential roundabouts we could have, potential, how many roads are we thinking about making roundabouts versus crossings versus signal improvements, kind of statistics or something that we could look at?
We do not have that.
Okay.
The whole purpose of providing the countermeasures table was really to provide a toolbox. But as you'll see as you read through the plan, both in that Chapter 3 section covering intersections and then again in Chapter 5, you'll see where one of the major recommendations is we really need to do more studies, especially of the intersections, to determine what countermeasures may be best at certain intersections. We've identified some intersections in the plan that we know have problems now or will have problems. But we still need some more detailed study of those specific intersections to determine exactly what countermeasures we should apply to those.
I just had a quick. I don't know if you want us to hold questions to the end or talk about it.
No, it's.
I just happen to notice like on page 313, and it is talking about Airport Boulevard, but it has a figure that goes on across on Morrisville Carpenter, and it has new intersections at Town Hall Drive and Church Street. Is this involved in some kind of crazy future in which there is an intersection at Church Street?
Hold on one second. Let me pull my plan up.
Been on the books for 25 years.
For Airport Boulevard,
Yeah.
yes, Airport Boulevard, the plan does include recommendation to extend it from 54.
Okay, so this is like if eventually they do this grade separation and everything else, then we won't have to worry so much about the left turns that we've been promised for thousands of years that we've taken away coming back. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that wasn't something that was.
This is connected from here to Davis Drive.
Okay. Oh, I got you. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Never mind. All right. Yeah, this is what the road would be added. Sorry. I derailed you for nothing.
Oh, so it's
Airport and aviation.
okay. I was thinking like he was that it's going to the airport.
Yeah. No. My bad.
All right. Moving on. Additional changes in Chapter 3 from the September 25th draft include a modified NC 147 alignment and removal of that Town Hall Drive connection to the proposed 147 from McCrimmon Parkway. Again, that was based on both discussion of this board and discussion by the Town Council. The project prioritization for the roadways section was removed from Chapter 3 and moved to Chapter 5. And then the Chapter 3 was also reorganized somewhat to improve readability, as well as we updated multiple figures and tables to improve legibility and, again, revise some of the layout. Chapter 4 is the alternative travel modes chapter, and it covers pedestrian, bicycle, and transit modes. The chapter is divided by mode, on-street bicycle facilities, multi-use path facilities, and transit. On-street bike facilities can include striped bike lanes and sharrows or shared lane markings. Multi-use path facilities include side paths, or what we had previously termed wide sidewalks, and greenways. And finally, the transit section includes the future transit network in town funded by Wake Transit with recommendations to plan for additional local transit service in the future. And you'll see on this slide some of the images from our plan for on-street bike facilities, the bike lanes and sharrows, and the multi-use path facilities, the greenways and the side paths. And then changes from the September 25th draft to Chapter 4 include revising the maps to where we have now two primary maps for this chapter for bike and ped. We have one map that shows all the on-street bicycle facilities, the recommended, and then one map that shows all the recommended multi-use path facilities. We moved the project prioritization for the alternative travel modes again into Chapter 5. We removed the multi-use path design guidance section and actually expanded it and created a new Appendix F, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And then we revised some page layout to improve readability in this section. Chapter 5, which is the action plan or the implementation section, includes some funding tables from the Blue Ribbon Commission report and an action plan for implementing the draft plan. The action plan begins with reviewing existing policies and programs and includes recommendations for development of new policies and programs on pages 5-4 through 5-7. The action plan also includes project prioritization for roadway and intersection improvements, road extensions, and independent multi-use path projects. The project prioritization is on pages 5-8 through 5-13 of the draft plan. Chapter 5 also had quite a few changes from the September 25th draft. Major changes to this chapter include moving all the project prioritization into this chapter and organizing all the recommendations by near, mid, and long term. And we also define near, mid, and long term. Policy and program recommendations are only provided as near or midterm, since plan is recommended to have a comprehensive update every 5 years. Some of the changes outlined on the slide, including moving the funding section to the front of the chapter, connecting the guiding principles to the prioritization section. We combined the roadway and intersection improvements and connectivity enhancing projects into one table and provided a single map of all the prioritized road projects.
Just so that I get a brief understanding. So when you say near time recommendations, would those be, if you have got a long-term project, let's take one of these here, let's say Airport Boulevard extension. I'm just using it as an example. If it is something that is important for the town, I suppose your near-time recommendations and mid-term recommendations have kind of incremental development approach to it, so that eventually when we get there, it's not like a big bang project. It will still give relief to the residents as they use some of these traffic patterns, but it does not necessarily need a huge investment up front. We can do something now that might be maybe a bit throwaway later on, but still gives relief to current issues.
It was a combination of that and also what the highest needs for the town were. And so, I mean, as you'll see, one of the highest needs, if not the highest, is probably NC 54 widening.
Sure.
Which we've heard discussed time and again. But some of the newer roads, while they would be, they would certainly be very helpful to have, getting some of these widenings on our existing roads, and especially on a main artery such as NC 54, is probably a higher priority than constructing a new road necessarily.
And the thing that's important to remember too is that this is a plan. So this, when we develop policies and priorities in this plan, money is no object. We don't really pay a whole lot of environmental. We don't pay a whole lot of attention to the actual cost of the project.
Sure.
It's truly based off modeling and needs, and then you come up with the prioritization. When it comes to funding, and what you really are talking about, a strategy of how do you make incremental changes to wholly create a whole in time, is through the CIP or the capital improvement project process. So this is a plan, this is a guidance that then council can use when they're competing with all other CIP projects to decide when and what to fund and how much. So there are two different things. This sets priorities, and then council can use that in consideration of all CIP projects. That can build new parks, new buildings, new roads, whatever have you. So this is pure guidance, and then recommendations of when you should do it, recognizing that when you really put some real world dollars to it, it may actually be a long-term thing in reality. So,
I was thinking about even in the near-term projects, right? Some of them, like NC54 widening, it can take forever to do it, right? So is there a, if you will, 30, 60, 90-day plan, right? As opposed to a plan that is 3 years out or 5 years out versus that's what I was looking for.
Correct, and that's not uncommon. If you have 5 miles, hypothetically of road, you can do a 2-mile stretch over one period of time and then do a 3-mile stretch of another. You phase it out. I mean, the McCrimmon Extension Project is a perfect example of that. There's a phase 1 and a phase 2. When you have different funding opportunities, and things along those lines.
Okay.
So the question about specifically on the NC54 grade separation for Airport Boulevard, I think from our recommendations, I think that was on the near-term list. Did town council have a different opinion on that? Did that push it to the midterm? Do you remember?
You're talking about aviation, right?
No, Airport
First
Boulevard.
mistake of me.
What's that?
Are you talking about aviation or airport?
Airport.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to look into that. I think it was, I believe in the September 25th version, it was still in that midterm. And that's, again, a lot of this prioritization was primarily based on quantitative analysis that was conducted. So it was just the criteria that we had laid out that actually this board and the town council had both discussed months and months ago now, were used to determine the prioritization. And so we actually created a score, and based on how the project scored is really how we prioritize them in this plan.
We can go back and look, because I know what you're referring to, is when we went down, I think it was in a
we came with our own lists.
And each one,
Yeah,
yes, we'll go back
Remember airport
and check to make sure. that the list matches what you provided. I believe it was the November meeting, but I know exactly what you're referring to. We'll double check.
Okay.
And it's just the airport grade separation that you're concerned?
Yeah, that was the one I thought was more deserving of being, in the near term. I thought that's what we had said, but maybe town council had a different view of it. I was just curious.
Council has not provided feedback on that particular part, but we'll go back and look and see if we potentially transposed something incorrectly.
I could have remembered it wrong.
And if we did, we'll bring it to your attention, and we'll put it as one of the recommended changes. If we didn't, if y'all want to discuss it more, we're happy to.
The airport, yeah.
And finishing up on changes to Chapter 5 from the previous draft, we have as I mentioned before, we organized recommendations for the policy and programs as well as facility improvements into near, mid, and long-term. Near term defined as less than 15 years, mid-term 15 to 24 years, long-term greater than 25 years. Yes, those are very long periods of time, but unfortunately, when it comes to transportation, it takes a long time to do anything. So I will say near term, less than 15 years, that was really based on looking at the primary way North Carolina funds transportation is through the State Transportation Improvement Program. That's a 10-year plan. So we already know the projects that are funded through 2027, so that's why we went to 15 years for that. And then everything else just sort of fell in from there. We provided a single map of all the prioritized independent multi-use path projects. We moved the transportation technology section from Chapter 5 and made it its own appendix and expanded that a little bit. And we also revised layout on some pages to improve the readability. And you'll see here a couple of examples of how we added the guiding principles to the prioritization to show with how the projects connect to those guiding principles. Now we'll get into the appendices, where we've added a number of new appendices and have changed the 3 that were in the previous draft. So Appendix A, which is a new appendix, is a glossary of terms. That was a direct request, I believe, from this board. And it was a really good one. I think we hope that this will be very helpful for not only you and the town council, but also citizens once this plan is, as they're reviewing the draft plan, and ultimately if the plan is adopted, hopefully this glossary will be helpful to understand a lot of the terms that are used in it. It includes a list of acronyms and terms frequently used in the plan and their definitions.
Do you, in the electronic copy, do you have a hyperlink from wherever that text is referred back to the appendix, or a hover over that displays this, maybe the definition itself?
We do not. We can certainly look into that, at least for maybe as we get into the final version, but we can certainly look into.
Makes it more readable. You don't have to go back and forth.
Yeah.
Let's say one confusing thing here. I'm looking at Figure 5 too. It shows like the 147 extension connecting to Davis Drive, and it's marked as red as in committed. And so looking at this for the first time, I would think, hey, they've already committed to connect that to Davis Drive. Right? And so maybe a different way of...
Could you like dash it in both directions?
Yeah,
like
I don't know, a different way of representing that.
Which figure is that?
It's 5-2.
Well, the easiest is probably to add a footnote, because it is committed. So there is
Extending it is committed, but not to where yet, I guess is that.
That's one of those where it has significant money associated with that project that's committed. So we can certainly look at, as Courtney said, either adding a footnote or adding a different color or something and noting it in the legend. But technically it is a committed project. So as you said, the alignment is not settled yet.
Right. Which is pretty significant of an issue, right?
Yeah, I mean, luckily the Campo has also amended in their adoption of their long-range transportation plan, they have shown a similar alignment to what we have. So it's likely that will be the alignment now. But we can certainly look into some different ways to show that.
I mean, I think if we're all aligned, then maybe it's not a problem. I just thought it was still less, less concrete than that. So.
All right.
Before you move on, Mr. Taylor, I went back and looked. You are correct. Your recommendation for airport at NC 54 for grade separation was short term.
Okay. So there's the grade separation, there's the extension, and just when I was looking at it even in more detail, I noticed that the extension is actually long term, which is 25 years or greater, and the grade separation was, as we had suggested, short term. Should those be?
They should be pretty much synced.
The same,
you
right?
can't build a bridge without going somewhere else, I wouldn't think.
An extension to
At least it would make
a grade
sense.
separation to nowhere.
It would still connect, but it wouldn't necessarily go all the way. It'd most likely link up to town hall or to church, one of the two. So there would be a connection over.
Okay.
It just wouldn't be a full length connection. So I guess the question for you is, how do y'all want to prioritize them? According to, we didn't get into the actual road itself. We just talked about the grade improvement previously, and that actually was at the December meeting. And at that meeting, again, you identified it as short term. So how do you want to define the road extension?
I would align them together unless someone felt differently.
No, I agree with you. I mean, at the very least, it should connect to Church Street. This way, you have an alternative to Macrimon Parkway, which is currently.
Among the uncommitted projects, to me, that seems like the most difference-making.
The connection, you mean?
Yeah, the full extension all the way, including the grade separation. I mean.
Okay, we'll make those recommended modifications.
And maybe the best way to do that in the plan, and it may be in, I think it's in Appendix C, but we did actually split Airport Boulevard Extension project into two phases in the plan. We have the grade separation extension Church Street, and then we have the Church Street to Town Hall Drive section. So we could do it that way too, and have the grade separation of Church Street or phase one, indicate phase one short term, and then maybe phase two is midterm.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and even here, I think it did indicate that the extension was from, let's see, where did it say? It's at 54 to current terminus, which means the whole thing.
Yeah,
right.
We'll work on that prioritization table and make that a little clearer.
Thanks.
Appendix B includes our standardized cross sections. This appendix includes 11 standard cross sections for roads in Morrisville. It also includes the street design guide, cross-referencing each cross section with the street hierarchy classifications. The cross sections themselves each include standard and alternative dimensions. And then we end the appendix with the Morrisville roadway inventory table, very similar from our current 2009 transportation plan, where we list most of the roads in Morrisville and explain which cross section they are. Some of the changes to this appendix from September 25th draft, it was previously Appendix A, so now it's Appendix B. We revised the street design table to be more user-friendly. We revised some of the standard street cross-sections to include the standard and alternative dimensions, and then we added that Morrisville roadway inventory table. And once again, here's our street design guide. Chairman Pritchard, do you want to keep going or do you want to take a break?
I think we should keep going.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah. Thank you.
Appendix C includes all of our project sheets. And these are project sheets for thoroughfare improvements and collector level roadway extension projects. Each project sheet includes planning level cost estimates, 2010 and 2040 volume, as well as 2010 and 2040 congestion. Includes a 3-year crash history, the project length, the extents of the project, and the roadway classification for that specific project. The changes from the September 25th draft include, of course, renaming this to Appendix C from Appendix B, reorganizing the introductory section that explains how project sheet data was developed, and then we reorganized project sheets themselves to ensure they were in alphabetical order. Appendix D is the engagement summary. It includes an overview of the public engagement during the planning process, including the community events, public workshops, public open houses that were held or attended, the board and council presentations and work sessions, as well as online survey and interactive mapping results. And the changes from the previous draft include, of course, renaming this to Appendix D from Appendix C, and then reorganizing several of the tables to make them easier to read, combining the online survey results into one map. We rescanned some of the paper maps that were used in some of the workshops in a higher resolution to make sure all the images were readable. And then we also converted all the scanned comments from the different comment cards and other activities we had throughout the process into a table format, once again, to make it a little bit easier to read. Appendix E is our scenario planning appendix. This is new from the September 25th draft. It includes the scenario planning process, the maps and report cards for McCrimmon Parkway, NC 54, and Town Hall Drive, which were 3 corridors we chose for the scenario planning. And this is where we went into a little bit of land use planning with this plan. We looked at how land use corresponds to transportation recommendations for these specific for these 3 corridors. And the Appendix E at the end of it actually has a report card for each of the corridors that shows how we had a baseline scenario, which is essentially what our current zoning and future land use plans show, and how that compares with if we change the land use on these corridors. So some interesting information in that appendix.
Just for my understanding purposes, you have a place pattern down below. Are they the same for both alternatives, or are they a bit different from the two? So you've got alternative 1 and base scenario, and you've got a place and pattern scenario. So I'm just trying to understand if it is the same, or based upon that, looking at others.
The scenarios are, if I'm understanding your question correctly, the scenarios are all different. So for each of the 3 corridors, we had a baseline scenario, which we essentially took the existing zoning map and future land use map and said, okay, if this is our baseline, ran the scenario planning with the roadway recommendations to see, how the congestion and everything else worked. And then we had one scenario which was changing that a little bit, and each corridor, the scenarios were a little bit different. So, for example, for the McCrimmon extension, or for the McCrimmon corridor, one of the alternative scenarios had more mixed use in certain nodes of the extension, and one of the other scenarios had less mixed use in certain nodes. So,
I think I got my answer. I was talking about the circular pattern you have. I think you are just basically color coding that. So
yeah, that's the same on every map. Is that what you're asking? That's
yeah. Got it. Thanks.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I got confused. So thank you.
So Appendix F, which is another new appendix. This is our new multi-use path design guidelines. This appendix includes fairly detailed design guidelines for construction of multi-use paths and amenities with the goal of creating a town-wide standard. And you'll see here a table from that appendix specifying the widths of some different widths for potential multi-use paths and where they should be used. And that appendix also includes some detailed construction guidelines as well. So one of the action items from that is taking that appendix and looking to implement the recommendations in this appendix into our engineering design construction manual for use on town and private projects in the future. Appendix G is the new Transportation Technology Appendix. Provides an overview of emerging transportation technology, and then it also includes a list of near-term planning strategies for Morrisville, which are shown on the screen there. Appendix H is another new appendix. It covers our plan and policy review, and it just provides an overview of all the adopted town, regional, and statewide plans, ordinances, and policies that were reviewed during the draft plan development. Appendix I is a new appendix that includes all the Crabtree Crossing Parkway extension analysis that was conducted in November, December, and January as part of the discussions of this board. It provides an overview of that additional analysis, and as a reminder, these maps and scenarios that are in that appendix was used by this board in addition to public comments to formulate the changes to the September 25th draft. As you'll see, there were ultimately 10 scenarios that were run using the Triangle Regional Travel Demand Model.
Can I ask you a question back onto your technologies part here?
Yeah.
How much influence do we have with regard to embracing technologies that I've seen in Europe where you can control the traffic flow by controlling the speed limits dynamically as opposed to just having a 50-mile plus out there. So there are lots of those technologies that you could use to reduce congestion or improve the flow of traffic. I didn't see any reference to any of them. This is more about what kind of new vehicles will be on road as opposed to what kind of technologies we could use to, basically make things safer or, reduce congestion.
So some of those technologies you mentioned would be considered more in the realm of intelligent transportation systems, or what we call ITS. And I think the chapter speaks a little bit to ITS projects, and I think we may have a little bit of one of our action plan items deals with some ITS systems. But as far as how much control we have over it, it really would depend on what roads we wanted to pursue doing that on. Of course, if they're state roads, truth is we probably don't have much control, and those are probably the roads that really would need that. But I will say both the state and of course CAMPO, our regional transportation planning agency for roadways and transportation, are looking at some different are looking at that type of thing. One of the projects that CAMPO will be undertaking, I think over the next year and a half or so, is a regional ITS plan. And I believe, so that plan will probably look at some of those types of technologies that are not so future. They're in use somewhere today. The primary purpose of Appendix G was to, I think, really try and look out even a little bit further, and really came about based on some conversations about what about autonomous vehicles, and so that's why you see it really more focused towards that end versus some of these technologies that are really out there today and can probably be implemented a little bit easier than maybe some of the autonomous vehicle recommendations.
Yeah. There's an ITS recommendation. My apologies. There's an ITS recommendation. It is the bottom row on page, page 5-6.
Okay.
That is where that recommendation is. If you want to take a little look at that.
Sure. Thanks.
And what would be an example of a dynamic traffic control, like in Europe or something? Like, what would be an example of that?
I'm not very familiar with that. I know the closest example we probably have currently in the U.S. is more related to what we call express lanes, which you're seeing on interstates, especially I know Virginia has implemented them. There's actually was at a presentation on their day. There's about 50 express lane projects either that have been implemented or being implemented throughout the U.S., including one down near Charlotte on I-77. that doesn't really change the speed limit dynamically, but what it does is it's a toll lane on an interstate, and the price of that lane changes dynamically depending on how congested the road is and how congested that lane is.
Another example which is more easier is traffic lighting. So if you have got a main intersection with a lot of traffic, and a lot of times we sit on the side roads forever to change it, and what it does is when it sees enough cars standing on, it changes the signaling automatically based upon what kind of waiting period is going on. It's not a fixed 30 minutes or 1 minute timeline. So that's the easiest thing that could be incorporated and increase better traffic flow.
And that traffic signal technology, actually, I think we do have that around in the state, even where a lot of our signals are on the town of Cary's coordinated signal system. And I don't know how into detail their system goes to some of that, but I know they have some of that type of capability where they can they've added cameras at a lot of their signals and a lot of the intersections where they have several guys who sit in a room and look at the intersection, see an issue, and they can dynamically change the signal right there at their computer. So we do have some of that technology, and that's, I think, becoming more and more widespread.
We can reach out to town of Cary to find out specifics as well and bring this back to you.
Yeah.
So I was thinking something more along the lines, if you have a lot of traffic, you just raise the speed limit and everybody just goes faster? No, that doesn't work.
That would be something
Sounds
that
good.
would be interesting to try. All right. Moving on. Finally, we have the next section of the presentation is going over some recommended modifications that, as staff, as we've had a chance to look through this draft and work on this draft, we've already have noted several modifications that we know will be needed for the next version, so we want to go on and get those out in front of you as well. These recommended modifications include modifying several figures, figure 3.2 to include some additional road names to make it a little bit easier to read the map and understand the map and figure out where you are on the map. Figure 5.2 and 5.3, those were mislabeled in this draft, so figure 5.2 should be figure 5.3 and figure 5.3 should be figure 5.4. And then on figure 5.3 / future 5.4, we'll also know that we need to label some greenways on there, and the location of the side path on Airport Boulevard is inadvertently shown on the south side of the road, and it should be on the north side of the road. Also, one thing that we want to make sure in the next draft is in the table of contents, have those hyperlinked for the individual sections in the table of contents as well as the figures, so that you can click and go right to it versus just being able to go to the chapter. And then also we need to make sure that the project links on the project sheets match the project links in table 3-3. Some additional modifications, revising some of the right-of-way widths for the cross sections in Appendix B to make sure that those widths can accommodate all the elements of that cross section. In some cases, we may be able to narrow that right-of-way width a little bit, but we just want to double check and make sure that the right-of-way widths we're recommending for these cross sections are really needed. And also, we want to add some new project sheets in Appendix C, including Markham Drive Extension, Morrisville East Connector, and Southport Drive Extension. And that will be so that we have project sheets for all the collector level or higher roadway extension projects recommended in the plan. And then one final piece that we've actually been working on is adding back in a Town Hall Drive extension north of McCrimmon Parkway. Not connecting it to 147, but instead trying to draw in a road that can provide some access to the neighborhoods up on Church Street between McCrimmon Parkway and NC 540 that currently only have a way to get out to Church Street. We'd like to be able to have a road back through some of that RTP land that would provide them a back way if Church Street was blocked or whatnot, to allow them a secondary access to their neighborhood. We've had, in our 2009 plan, we have a Little Drive extension that would have provided some of that. However, that was not, we realized that was not going to come to pass with RTP, and so that's why it was removed from this plan. So instead, we have reached out and have actually had discussions with RTP about adding in this other road extension, and so far they've been favorable to such a road being added in. So we point blank asked them, can we put the line on the map, and they said yes. And of course, as we move forward and get the line on the map and get that road extension into our prioritization, as the town moves forward, if it looks like town would ever construct that, we would then go to RTP and have some more detailed discussions about what that road would look like, where exactly it would be.
Okay.
Do you see that road ending up in a dead end, or do you see it ending up into the Keystone Park, or is it Keystone? Yeah, Keystone Park, right?
It
up
probably,
or on Davis Drive.
We haven't really looked too terribly close at it, but I think based on some initial conversations and initial drawing on maps, we would probably want to try and take it all the way to Providence Place. There's a new subdivision that's coming in on the very edge of Providence Place that's connecting into Providence Place. They're going to be required to provide a road stub down to the RTP property, and so we're sort of envisioning this Town Hall Drive extension would run into that, so it wouldn't actually be a dead end. It would be connected on both ends into other street networks.
It would be nice if it could connect to Davis as well.
That's probably going to be a harder thing, and especially with the 147 extension currently, as we've shown in our plan connecting to Davis, we probably can't get another road connection out.
At the very least, it should reach the industrial, the Keystone Park that is out there. Because right now it is a major safety risk that Church Street goes through a subdivision to Keystone Park, and I see people driving.
It physically can't connect there.
Yeah.
There's just, it literally can't get there.
So one, Keystone Park is not in Morrisville. So
No, I know.
it is in Durham. And two, 540 is our boundary. So we can't take the road through the middle of 540. So we would not be able to take this road any further than Providence Place. That'd be as far north, simply because 540 is a hard boundary. And the other thing, connecting to Davis Drive, if we had a road connector to Davis Drive, it would significantly impact a lot that's currently on the market in RTP, and taking a connector road plus 147 would basically make that lot completely non-developable. So that's really off the table too. The conversation with RTP was 100%. We understand connectivity is important to the back of your neighborhoods. That is okay to put that as a line on the map.
They can just make that a school and
Look at the
give it to
line,
Morrisville.
it can't go, without taking all of Providence Place out, that road can't curve up to get to Keystone. They just can't do it.
That's not going to be.
All right. So moving on, finish up our presentation. We have just a few more slides here. Next, we wanted to give you the sort of the staff's recommended schedule for the board for the next few months for reviewing this. Again, you have tonight, you have the staff presentation, any board discussion and questions you wish to have tonight. We're recommending at the next meeting on April 12th to open the public comment session. And again, we envision some additional board discussion and questions after that. And we are envisioning continuing that public comment session until May, or recommending that you continue that public comment session into May and close it at your May meeting, and then with the final recommendation coming in June. And again, this is only staff recommendation, and it's our sort of our best recommendation at this time, our best guess, but certainly the board can move faster or slower as you wish. And you just let us know as we move through this, if you feel that you need to extend the public comment session even longer, we can certainly do that as well.
But we do need confirmation this evening as to whether or not you wanted to open it up at the April 12th, so we can include that as part of our public outreach.
Can we do April 12th? That's public comment session. Have the open discussion and questions, and then have May as our recommendation date? Or is that too quick?
You could. I was just actually trying to avoid taking the transportation plan in the budget in July, in June at the very same time. And I didn't want to compress the opportunities for anybody to speak. So that's why, when Ben and I spoke, that I thought that it was really best to have 2 solid months for the public comment. So that's the rationale behind our recommendation.
Okay.
And to follow up with that too, this recommendation would also allow, after the public comment session closes on May 10th, if the board has further discussion and even has some additional changes or modifications they would like to see the draft plan, that would give staff a month to make those and bring you back a final draft document that you could then recommend forward to the town council, versus trying to potentially make changes on the fly and you not necessarily seeing it after you make your recommendation.
Okay.
I think the schedule looks good to me.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So
we're going to have 2 sessions, I don't see. Yeah.
Right.
So based on that, we'll move forward with scheduling April 12th as opening of the public comment session and advertising that appropriately.
Just one more question. So the public comments, do you foresee only this being the only forum, or do you also see gathering it on websites and other places?
You're jumping ahead of me just a little bit. No, the short answer is no. Okay. We have a whole. We actually created we worked with our public information officer and created a entire communications plan for this plan update. So this board and the public comment session of this board is one small part. As you see, as we move forward, we will have additional public input opportunities. One is what we've called our comprehensive awareness and education campaign. So we have several community and neighborhood events that we're working on scheduling. We've actually been able to firm up a lot of the dates. Anything on these next 2 slides, any dates you see in bold have been confirmed. So those include our Morrisville Transportation Fair on March 22nd, the Bike Safety Rodeo held by our Fire and Rescue Department on April 7th, which is a Saturday. We'll have a pre-meeting event on April 24th before the council meeting. On May 3rd, we'll be attending the Park West Village concert series and have a booth out there. May 19th, we'll also have a booth at Springfest, and we're currently working with the Chamber of Commerce to get either tag on to one of their existing events or get some sort of event for the business community in April or May. Currently, we're looking at their Coffee and Connections event that they held in the mornings, but we're in discussions with the chamber to see what their recommendations are. And then we also have neighborhood meetings. So as you see, I think it's a total of about 12 to 15 overall events and meetings that we've worked to schedule. Some of the committed or the confirmed events are April 4th, just drop in at Cedar Fork Community Center. Again, the evening event at Cedar Fork is really aimed for parents stopping by to either drop off or pick up their kids from after school or athletics. And then April 17th, we have a confirmed event out at Perimeter Park during lunchtime hour at their new, I believe they call it the Perimeter Perk amenity space. So we're getting a little bit of space there to talk to the business community out there. We have another drop-in session at Cedar Fork Community Center on April 27th during the day, and that's a Senior Friday, I believe is what they call it, so to give us a chance to talk to some of the senior community. May 7th, we'll be out at the Morrisville Aquatics and Fitness Center during the day from about 10 to 12:30, and then again in the evening to try and capture folks who go there for fitness. 10 to 12:30 is, I think, several classes, and they have more, of course, in the evening. May 12th which is Saturday, we will be out at Morrisville Community Park. And then May 23rd, which is a Wednesday, I believe, we would be at the Triangle Rock Club. And then several other events you see that we're working on trying to get confirmed now would be a stop-in event at Kids Creek at the clubhouse for folks coming home from work on April 11th. And then again out at Breckenridge on May 17th, again, just trying to capture folks as they come home from work. And then May 1st at the Luther Green Community Center to talk to the folks who are there for Meals on Wheels, some of the senior events that go on there.
One additional question, you probably have done this numerous times. So what I notice is that the most vocal people who want to give feedback are people who are opposed to certain things, while the ones who agree typically don't comment at all. Right? So how do you deal with a feedback that is lopsided, if you will? How do you account for 1% that is making all the noise and drowning the 99%?
Well, one, scientifically, there's no good way for us to measure
where
I'm just breaking, what percentages are which. I think it's very important that we listen to all the comments, across the board, and then make conscious decisions on how to change things. Understanding that somebody's always impacted by change.
Sure.
But you have to balance it. So this is a vision of the town. So it's how do you balance all the competing needs to come up with your best recommendation. And that's really what it is. So you have to look at all of it, put it all together, and decide with your best recommendation, understanding, depending on where you live, some of the times those impacts are greater, and sometimes the impacts are less. Some people are benefiting more, and some people aren't. That's just the way change works. And so you, as the board, are then challenged, really, with trying to decide what is that best balance that defines the best vision for Morrisville, specific to transportation.
I would agree with you, Courtney, and I think that's the essence of our job as a board.
And again, just wanted to throw this out, just reminding you of the methods of outreach that we plan to use, including press releases, social media, our not only the town homepage on the website, but also the specific transportation plan update webpage that's on our website. We are planning at least one postcard mailing. We're going to be creating some flyers, using our town email list, emailing homeowner association and other stakeholders. So we're trying to get as broad a reach as we possibly can as we move forward. And then again, of course, the second opportunity that is still available has been since, I believe, September, October timeframe, and we still have it up as our public comment portal. It's changed how you get to it a little bit with the new website, but we do have a transportation plan update button on the homepage now. So you click on that, and then you go and you click on the little train, and it'll take you to the comment form. You fill out the comment form, and it goes directly to an email that we access, and we're compiling those. One note on the public comments, you'll notice we included another compilation tonight with a few more comments we've received. And tonight, that's the last time you'll see that big list of 500 plus. We're starting anew after that, where that list ends. We're now starting anew since we've now released the revised draft. We wanted to create a clear cutoff between comments that were on the September 25th draft to comments that are being made now on this revised draft now that we've released it for public review and comment. So moving forward, you'll still be getting the public comment, all the compilation of public comments. It'll just be a new list. So what you see next month may be shorter, depending on the amount of public comments we receive. And one final thing that we didn't really include in the presentation, but once this board makes their recommendation and it moves over to town council, there will be at least one public hearing as well at town council. So plenty of opportunities still remain for public comment.
Yep.
And that's all we have in the presentation. I appreciate you sticking through for the 50 plus slides. But if there's any further questions or comments from the board or discussion, we're happy to answer what we can and bring back additional information as needed.
I appreciate you going through the almost 50 slides, Ben, so that's good. Personally, I think it's a much better flow, and the plans for outreach are very impressive, which is key, I think. And I think it reflects staff's work over the last couple of months, and I think you ended up with a much better product. So it was worth spending that extra couple of months. So thank you. Any other comments?
No, I agree with you.
No. Let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll reconvene. So, Michelle, I think we're ready. Or Courtney first, or Michelle?
I'm just going to talk from here, if that's okay.
Sure.
I'm trying to keep this a little less formal. But I did want to go over with everyone the Planning and Zoning Board handbook that was distributed to you at the end of the meeting last month. I do have additional copies here if anyone needs one to walk through.
I didn't bring mine, but I mean, I'm sorry, I forgot to bring it back.
I have it. Same one, right? Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So really what we've done is pulled together in one handbook information regarding the PCB from a number of different sources. The UDO, our public bodies, administrative policy, general statute, Robert's Rules of Order, and some other locations. So really just for your ease and convenience, trying to put everything together in a nice packet that could be a resource to you. I do want to give a shout out to Dylan. He really helped pull this together at the end. He put some work into it as well. But if I could, I was hoping just to go over it very briefly, section by section, and see if PZB had any comments or questions on anything. And there were a couple topics that we kind of had highlighted in the document for discussion amongst yourselves. So I'm going to jump to section 2, which is establishment and authority. Most of this really comes almost directly out of the UDO, really indicating what the powers, duties, and responsibilities of the Planning and Zoning Board are. Really reviewing development applications, comprehensive plan, and conducting, other studies and initiatives that the town council may direct or request of you. So, are there any questions on that section?
It's not really a question for this document, but somewhere we need to sort of remind everybody that the comprehensive plan is in fact a series of plans.
Yes.
So it may or may not be in this handbook. But.
Yeah, and Chairman Pritchard is correct. I mean, tonight we were talking about the transportation plan, we were talking about the land use plan, we were talking about the town center plan. All of those plans, and there are other plans in addition to those, combined all make up the comprehensive plan. So that is a good point.
Thank you.
As well as a number of those plans have been thrown out the window over the years.
We're hoping with the transportation plan update and the land use plan update that we're going to have some good guidance here moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Section 3 really deals with memberships, planning and zoning board makeups, appointments, resignations. Once again, most of this came almost directly out of the UDO. So does anyone have any questions on that?
I just had a question. The ETJ member, is that something that's like required by state law? I mean, how did that come about that one member is from the ETJ?
It is required by state law, but in our instance, some point, it can become difficult to find someone from that area, and I think that's the situation that we found ourselves in. So our ETJ member, who is yet to be formally appointed by Wake County, is actually going to be coming from inside town limits this time around, because we could not find someone from the technical ETJ. So Section 4 talks about officers, chair, vice chair, how they're elected once a year, recommendation made to the town council, and kind of their duties and responsibilities. Are there any questions on that? Moving on to Section 5, which is staff, and that talks about the planning director's duties and just the general support that staff provides to the planning and zoning board, being a general resource to you, and also noting that, from time to time the town attorney can also be consulted on issues and provide support to you as well. So I'm going over this very quickly in a broad sense, but were there any questions on that section? Okay, so most of those front sections really came out of directly out of the UDO. Getting into meetings, a lot more of this is now coming out of state statute in terms of how you adopt a schedule every year, when agendas need to be published, meetings canceled, how you go about doing that, and the timeframes that needs to be done in. We did highlight one section here for possible discussion. When we were pulling this together, we found an old handbook that it looked like someone had started years ago, and in there was a section that said meetings shall adjourn no later than 11 p.m. So we carried that over from that old draft document, and that's one of the things that we did want to, we called out to touch base with you on.
There used to be some meetings where we went later than that.
Wow. How old was it, that statute?
Well, it was in one of the development handbooks, I think, that started in Phillips' era.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember we had too many meetings over the years.
Well,
we hit 11 a couple of times, but...
We had a few, I think we got to midnight, but I mean, that was in the bad old days in Park West Village and Lord knows what. So I think this is actually a good rule, and there's a way around it, which is neat. So it might be very useful if we have a really extended public comment session.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to make it less than 11? If you can always vote to extend it, I mean, why not 10:30?
And keep in mind, there's that public comment session, I'm sure she's going to get there, that talks about
Yes. Right.
regulating that as well.
So yeah, I personally like to leave it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes. Yeah, we'll go ahead and keep that in there. I think
Thank you.
get much past that hour of the evening, and sometimes we don't all make our best decisions that late.
So I guess the question that the 2/3 vote, how is that really workable with 5 members? I mean, if 2 were absent, and I mean,
but it would be 2/3 of the.
So it had to be 4 out of 5.
2/3 of the voting members at that time, and there's all sorts of issues.
Yeah.
Like if you have 7 council members, that's a prime number, so it's
Right. Yeah.
so 2/3 of that is always an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, we will keep that in there then. Right. Section 7 is the rules of procedure, so it's talking about how the agenda is prepared, items being placed on the agenda by request of the chair or a majority of town council, by the town manager, planning director, or town attorney, or lastly, by the request of a majority of the PCB. Then also gets into the order of agendas. So if you have not had an opportunity to look at section B1, I'd ask that you take a look at that, see if there are any adjustments to the agenda order that you might want to recommend. And then we did highlight item F, public address, for discussion as well.
Let me just take you back to A1 if I can.
Okay.
It's a little tiny picky point, but shall not discuss any confidential material. We should just say at an open meeting, because later on we talk about a closed meeting when we can talk about confidential information.
I think that for those rare instances where we'll send something out with your agenda that might be marked confidential, it doesn't happen often, but on occasion, maybe you'll get a memorandum from the town attorney just noting, if that happens, those types of items, obviously the confidentiality of those is important.
Right. So we should just say, the very last sentence, board members shall not discuss any confidential material at any open meeting or with any members of the public.
Okay.
So then,
you're right, you do have the right to go into closed session. It's very limited. I don't think it happens very often for planning and zoning boards. I think I've only seen it done once in my career, but it is a possibility.
What is the difference between public address and public comment? I guess I was conflating the two into one thing.
Public comment is on an item that's on the agenda. Public address is an opportunity for someone from the public to come and speak to you for 3 minutes about any topic that may not be on the agenda. So if they have a concern out of the community, they believe that we need more parks or greenways, they could come and use 3 minutes to let you know that that's something that they're concerned about.
I think it's a nice idea. Personally, it's never been used, but it's nice to be.
I agree. We should always have option for the public to come in and give feedback.
And so you do want to keep that?
I think so. It would be up to us, I think, to separate. If somebody wanted to use the public address time to speak about something that's really on the public comment session, then we should manage that. But I like the idea of it being open to anybody to talk about any topic.
And general order of the agenda, any changes you'd want to see there?
That's good.
What's the difference between old business with public comments and old business? To me, it's the same, right?
Well, items that we have public comment on tend to more be your development applications. So for certain types of development, we send out notices that the project is going to be presented to you and that the public is invited to come and comment if they would like to. So that's considered business with public comment. There's that formal notification that goes out letting people know that there's going to be an opportunity to speak on that. And a lot of that is in our UDO as well, so it's regulation. Regular business is a lot of times some of your workshop items, your transportation plan, the land use plan, where it's, that's something that we were discussing amongst ourselves tonight, but public comment wasn't taken tonight. It's going to be taken at the next meeting. So that's the distinction, just wanting, if there's an item with public comment, wanting to put that first, and then the items without, do after that.
The upcoming events, those are typically town events?
That is something that has historically been done by the town council, whether or not you want to include that on your agenda.
Well, I know that like Courtney and Ben before her would have kind of some upcoming, they'd make note of it in the planning director's report. And so if we want to it would be nice to have this information, and whether or not it gets included as its own line item or incorporated into the planning director's little spiel.
This is a preferred item that council likes to see on agenda, so if any
Then
member
that's
of the
great.
public comes on here, and basically it's just a link so they can go and see it.
That's great.
So it's not something I really discuss.
Okay.
It's just on there in case somebody happens to want to visit some of our town.
Then great.
Just now looking at the agenda in this manner, I wonder if we should move the public address from where it is to perhaps after the new business. This way, anybody who is sitting here and if they want to take 3 minutes and talk about what happened, let's say I just walk in, interested in knowing about how this thing works, and after having heard old business, new business, and they just want to comment on something related to it or something outside to it, they have their 3 minutes to do so.
I personally wouldn't like that, because then you get the people who have something to say at the public comment session would then get up and say, and by the way,
I got it.
I think also, isn't it so that the people don't necessarily have to stay through the
Right.
entire agenda just to make a comment about something unrelated?
Makes sense. Makes sense.
I concur with the chairman's point.
Yep, makes sense.
I think it also gives us a chance to talk about it afterwards.
Yeah.
Right, as part of if it's about the business we're about to discuss, we can address any questions, concerns.
Yep.
Which I thought was helpful.
What you're saying with item 13 in the agenda, that we're just having a link? Or is it typically a list with the link?
Are you back to the events?
Currently, it's just you have to cut and paste the URL.
So all I was thinking was maybe instead of part of the agenda, could it not be a line item on the bottom that said, no?
The way the agenda is electronic now, it's not produced through PDFs. We have to go through this system and create it this way.
Okay.
So there's really kind of two options. One, which would be more staff intensive, we have to start creating agenda items for it, which I would strongly discourage you from going in that direction. Or two is just the current method to put it up there.
and I think we would rely on Courtney and her staff if, there was some special event like this coming Saturday, you'd probably remind us informally anyway. So.
No, and I wasn't asking for bullets. My other idea is if we're just giving a generic link, for more information on town activities, go to the following URL and have that outside the agenda, since we're not actually going to talk anything about item 13. Might someone coming to a meeting be confused about, well, why aren't we talking about it? And it's just a URL.
Again, council wants it on there.
And we serve at the pleasure of the council.
Think of a creative way to get more information on there. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to talk about it. But that was something that was desired.
Sure.
I think it is what it is. So, thanks, Catherine.
So the workshop agendas and the order of those agendas look very similar. So I'm going to jump to the board meeting and kind of the order of the presentations for the individual items. So staff presentation, applicant presentation, then going to public comment, questions from planning and zoning board, discussion, motion. Any questions on section 12?
Sorry, I'm confused. Section 12?
Section.
You said section 12.
Oops, yeah, section 7, sorry.
Just making sure we're still aware. Just
The B, not an X.
All right. I see what you did.
That's why we don't use Roman letters.
a minor typo and to the work session. If you made it the purpose of work sessions, plural, then your do not will match the case.
Okay. Okay, public participation, we will keep the public address section in there based on your prior discussion. This section, I'm not going to go through all of it, but it does touch on the public comment portal, how we're really encouraging people to use that as a way to sign up and speak at meetings, but still does give the chair the option to allow anyone to speak that might come to the meeting and, for whatever reason, had not signed up on that ahead of time. Sticking with the 3 minutes per person, 6 minutes for a group. And I'll stop there before I get to the highlighted section to see if you had questions about anything else up until that point.
Perhaps this is another way of seeking public comment, public addresses. What the current methodology is basically you show up here and you speak for 3 minutes. Do we have alternative ways where somebody might not be able to come in because of work reason, health reason, whatever, right? But they want to bring some or address something to the board. Is there somewhere once we put the agenda up, people can at least put in there, here is my thought on the agenda, or here is what I want you guys to talk about. And then maybe as part of that public address section, we can just review it as part of the meeting here.
Yeah. For the public comment portal, that really links to items on the agenda. So if someone can't attend the meeting, you could use that to register speak, or you could use that to submit what we call an e-comment, where there are written comments. But those are for items that are on the agenda. Right. Someone who just wants to, address you generally about a topic not on the agenda could always submit something in writing through the planning department. We're going to forward that and share it with you.
Okay. Is there a way we could make it easier on the website? Maybe not right away, but something you may want to explore where email is getting outdated. Not everybody knows everybody's emails, right? So if we have a website, we have a mechanism to capture feedback like any comment, maybe we should explore seeking comments not seeking, but basically have a forum where they can come in and submit their feedback.
Yeah, and I know for town council, you could email them directly from the website. So just if you have, comments or concerns about something going on in general, that option's available to you as well. It doesn't go directly to you, but it's still going to the town so that those people are heard. It's not something that we've discussed at the PZB level.
Okay.
I think there have been instances when, if people have wanted to address a planning matter, they usually start with planning staff, and then staff's very good about sending us things if it's appropriate. So I think we've kind of got that covered. It's not formal, but it seems to have worked.
Okay.
On item number 2, E2, I do remember quite recently trying hard to follow the order in which people had signed in. It didn't work. So, it seemed easier to just let them line up in the way that they wanted to.
Okay.
There's so
You
many.
could word that to give you some flexibility to adjust as needed.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the main thing.
Transportation plan that happened, and we just ended up having a line forming.
Yeah.
But I guess if be a little more rigorous with people actually stating their name and their address, because I feel like we had a lot of people up here that were just sort of spouting off almost, which it was a heated thing, whatever. But I don't know that we really kept track of who was who and who said what or whatever.
We did. So
you were able to?
Yeah.
Okay.
I made a statement, and they ended up walking back, providing their name and their address.
I just feel like a lot of people weren't giving complete. I don't know.
And we were double checking,
Okay.
so we were able to track down every single person that provides, with the exception of one person, their name matched their property records.
Okay.
So that's
but that made a lot more research for you, though. I mean,
it's fine, but there is an online system that should be up and running, hopefully at some point, where people enter all their information, and you will be able to log in outside of the computer, and you can also log in before you can show up to sign up to speak. And once that's up and running, there'll be a solid list, from person to person.
Because that was the difficulty. It was on paper, so, Marty needed the paper so that you could keep track for the minutes, and we needed a paper list up here, so.
That's correct, and then some people wrote legibly and some people did not, and so I agree, it ended up just lining up was the best method.
So a little bit more flexibility and we'll cope.
Mm-hmm.
So you ready for the highlighted bit?
What's that?
You ready for the highlighted section?
Yeah. So this came out of the town council's policy, their public comment and hearing policy. Didn't know if it was something that, for consistency purposes, you would want to adopt as well. But it does limit public comment to a maximum of 20 minutes for those in favor and 20 minutes to those opposed.
The problem I have is that life isn't always that simple.
Yeah.
Black and white.
It's not the black and white. And
that's why there's an exception for the chair.
I would rather just make it 30 minutes for.
No, even that.
If you want to put a constraint on the time limit, then you don't know who is in favor or who is against when they want to come and comment.
Well,
personally, I think 3 minutes a person, regardless, is fair. But there is an argument of being consistent with the rules at this board versus the rules at the council level. So we wanted to throw it out there too.
I think one of the hallmarks of our forum is that we are a little bit less formal. And although it may take us up to the 11 o'clock limit sometimes, I think we owe the public the opportunity to speak if they want to. And just because you happen to be person number 11, all your 30 minutes is gone, it's not fair. So we have to, I think, grin and bear it the times that we do have
As
that.
well as if someone takes the time to come down to
Yeah.
town hall
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, we're going to cut it off.
Yeah.
And, they're probably not going to come back and get the information.
Right.
Questions then, if I can. So we'll one note that you do want to do something different from the adopted town policy by council. So we'll make a note of that. But do you want to talk about potentially establishing a cap? No more than 2 hours of public comment or 1 hour public comment, regardless of what, if it's in favor of or in opposition to. And then you can vote whether to continue it to another meeting or continue on that evening.
And that was kind of also one of my motivations of saying we need to have a forum where people can submit their comments, where they can submit it up front, right? They don't necessarily have to stand here for 3 minutes and speak. Yes, they can put their emotions in here when they speak, but they could have submitted that comment up front, and then they don't necessarily have to sit here for 2 hours until their turn comes.
A lot of people, if they're really passionate about a particular topic, want to do both. Yeah. And any other opportunity they're going to have, because they really want to make sure that they're heard. I don't know how many actually people came to the podium and spoke off the top of my head, but I'm fairly certain every single person that spoke also provided a written comment.
It's about 25, I think.
And sometimes a third one via email, sometimes phone calls.
Or multiple comments or multiple.
And it's not uncommon that I can have a person send me 20 plus emails on a particular topic, and it's just regardless of what the topic is, just to kind of send their point in and ask for clarification.
I think maybe if you can think of the right language, we might want to put something like the board may
reserve the right.
Yes, to give us some sort of flexibility. If we're at 10:30 and we've still got some important items on the agenda, then I think we might have to.
curtail it.
I mean, we can always do that anyway, but it'd be nice to have something written down that's a sort of a guideline to how we might do that.
Generally, though, I would think that if they're here and we're here,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It is a catch-22. I mean, if somebody has taken the time to drive here, I think they should be heard. But the flip side is, if you have 500 people that showed up to say the same thing 500 times, that one person speaking up and the 499 standing up, I mean, the same message is received. Right. So it's one of those things of, kind of management, time meeting management control, where you just have to make the decision. But I think it's more important to have a policy in place so that if you do have to make that decision, right, to continue it, you have a strong leg to stand on when you get to that point. So that way everybody can know coming in, if you see, we're a packed house, that, if we're at 10:30, the board will vote whether to continue this to a next meeting or continue hearing comments. If everybody there knows and they know up front and we're all on the same page before the event starts, so that people won't feel on a necessary topic that they're being cut off, particularly to a topic or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's the sort of language that we need.
If we felt like we were going to do something like that, it would also be, I think, helpful to organize who's here for what topic before we start. If we see a big crowd, and understand if there's 3 people here to talk about Green Drive, and there's 45 people here to talk about Crabtree Crossing, let's let Green Drive talk, and then the rest of that time can be taken by Crabtree Crossing, for example.
Good idea.
Right. So.
And when I know there's a large crowd and they're contacting me and asking me how to participate, I always tell them to wear one color, choose a color, wear it, and have somebody speak for the entirety. I mean, so it's not uncommon that we see lots of colors here, and I try to do that because I'm like, 1, you seem as a united message, and 2, not everybody has to come to the podium, to hear the same message over and over and over again for an hour and a half.
Did you do that either the last time when we had public comments or the time before where you sort of said,
yep,
if anybody has anything different to say?
Well, I mean, I think people...
It didn't make any difference.
No, they did abuse it.
They still wanted to talk.
I mean, they appointed one person to talk for 6 minutes, and then a lot of them got up and talked too. I mean, that's...
What I thought was interesting, though, was also you had everyone who stood up for the person who was speaking to the group.
That's what I'm just saying.
And then everyone still came up and spoke individually.
We should cut that off.
Yeah, to try and count for the minutes.
Overall, from where I sat, I thought it went well. I mean, I thought that everybody had an opportunity to speak over multiple months, and honestly, nobody terribly abused the fact that they came up and spoke a second time, even though we're pretty clear there is no speaking a second time. So I thought the process was very fair. I thought, the chair provided ample opportunities for people to speak more than once, even though it is fairly darn clear that you shouldn't. But I thought it was of good value to the process personally. And in any project moving forward, it's not a bad way to see public input provided.
I don't know. I disagree. I think that we shouldn't allow people to speak twice. If the rules say they can't, they can't. I know firsthand there were people that were in favor of Crabtree Crossing that felt bullied by the large number of people here, and they didn't speak that day.
And if you page, the next highlight session is people should only speak once.
Right, but that's what I mean. I think we need to be more rigorous. If people are with a group, they need to identify the group that they're with, identify the people, and then don't speak again. I mean, it allows a group that may not be a large majority of town to just get riled up and then hijack the process. And it doesn't have to just be with this. It can be with any particular project. I mean, there's 26,000 people, however many in Morrisville right now. 200 of them shouldn't dictate what we do in the town for the other, 25,800. Or at the very least, they should do it fairly and don't break the rules.
Occasionally, we have gotten some good ideas and recommendations from public comment.
Oh, I'm not saying not to have public comment, but if we have the rules, I'm just saying let's go by the rules.
Against it, there's the whole room's for it, and everybody's against it, or everybody's for it except for this one guy, and he gets up, and we're like, yeah, nobody thought about that.
Well, and this may be again one of those things that from an IT perspective we try to bring in is we do something called as design thinking, which basically means Everybody gets a sticky page. You put your comments. Whatever you want to say, you put it on the sticky page, put it up on the board, and then as staff or the whoever is organizing the meeting then kind of puts the ones that are kind of similar together, and that becomes your, here are my 20 or 30 feedback that are exactly the same, or so you get a grouping of the feedback, and everybody feels they have participated as well. And more importantly, in our business setting, not everybody feels that my boss takes over everybody's. Everybody has a voice because it's more anonymous, right? In that sense.
That's what we did with all the comments that we received, both in person and online. I mean, there was some general themes, if you will, and we covered in one of the meetings those themes. And sometimes the themes didn't match.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a theme of connectivity. We need more roads. We need more, greenways. We need more bike paths.
But not in my backyard.
And then that's exactly right. And then we had very specifics. We do not want connectivity here.
Yeah.
So you're going to find that there's going to be competing topics that both rise to the top. And that's where then you get stuck with that hard decision.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean that's why we are here, right? To like he said about to take into account the 1,200 people or more, the 2,600 people we have in Morrisville, or families that live in Morrisville. So I do understand that, but we're just thinking about different ways to help people voice their comments, right? Nothing else.
Collecting more comments through all those public opportunities that, for that particular item. So you'll see new themes with the transportation plan again. I know I'm going into a date, but you'll see new themes potentially. You may see the same themes, I don't know. But we're definitely going to do the same process again, and we'll bring them back for that.
Maybe for now we just table this.
I'm going to ask Michelle to come up with some sort of language that gives us something we can use if we need to.
I was, based on the discussion, thinking that we could revise this section as you had recommended, basically to give you the discretion, right, if the hour is getting late, to continue that public comment to another time.
Right.
And then if you flip the page, the next highlighted section, I think section we've already touched on. This is the section that talks about even if a public comment session is continued, if you've already spoken, you cannot speak again. You get to speak once.
And mental note from me, next time we have a public comment session, to just read that. May not make a difference, but at least we'll have tried.
Okay, moving on to section 9. This is where we start getting into kind of Robert's Rules of Orders, how to make a motion, and the different types of motions, and voting requirements. Under voting requirements, there is the option to abstain, but I don't think we use that very often. Just as a reminder, if you find that you believe you have a conflict of interest, so you're going to need to abstain, we have alternates. So just let us know ahead of time.
Well, I've abstained not because of a conflict of interest. I'll call out a conflict of interest at the beginning of an item. But I have abstained once or twice over the years. And I'm trying to remember. It was more a matter of, I don't remember if I couldn't make up my mind or if it was, I don't remember why exactly I abstained.
Well, I can imagine there were times when you really didn't mind either way. Yeah. And you didn't want to sway the vote either way because you genuinely felt it didn't really matter. The drawback of that, of course, is if we all felt that way, we wouldn't get a vote. But so at least this gives the opportunity to abstain. I'm a little bit worried about, if we've got the minimum quorum, which is 3 people, and one person abstains, it's not a very powerful vote.
Well, and in that case, it wouldn't pass. So abstaining it's a right you have. What this section really talks about is even if you choose to abstain, we still need a majority of the 5, including the person that abstained.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that,
In other words, it's the same thing as a no.
no,
In a way,
abstention goes with the majority, unless it's split,
I
right?
think that's what she said.
She was just saying that, yeah.
Abstention is made, a majority of the members present, including the member abstaining, is still needed to decide an item.
So if you're 5 people and you abstain, you still have to have 3 people say yes.
To carry the motion, yeah.
So it's essentially the same as a no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had a question under motion to table or continue, that last paragraph. I have read that last paragraph 4 or 5 times, and I still I don't know the procedure. Not that it's all that important, I guess, but it was just like, if that happens and this happens, I think I needed a flow chart, maybe.
Which section are you talking about?
The last paragraph of motion to table or continue.
I think she's looking right above B.
Yeah, I'm trying to read that section.
Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll just make myself a little flow chart, then I'll understand. Like, yes,
Basically, if you
no.
make a motion to table something or to continue something, that motion doesn't pass, you've got to move forward and act on it.
You have to move forward and
Act on the original motion.
act on the original motion.
It's like if I make a motion to adjourn,
That
then you
is
could motion to table my
confusing.
motion. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And if
The
your motion to
original
table
motion.
fails, then we still have to talk about adjourning, whatever.
Gotcha.
But I'll look at that wording, because if you had to read it 3 times,
Well, it could just be me, yeah. You have to take that into effect, too.
clarify.
I mean, all of this is too much legal language for me.
Get used to it.
Oh, man.
Right. So did we need to have any more discussion about abstaining? Or are we okay with that? Or should we just say if you abstain, it means you vote for the motion, otherwise you have to consciously vote against it?
Leave it. Statute that is
I don't think we could just change that.
does not, it essentially ends up falling in the no category.
Okay.
I don't remember off the top of my head. So.
But for the record, you didn't vote against it. You just
Right,
voted.
and that's what people use.
You abstained from the vote.
Right.
Yeah. From a progress perspective, it's a no.
But if you have a conflict.
From a record perspective, it's a
Yeah,
nothing.
sneaky way of voting no.
It's simply, I mean, it can be you weren't prepared for the meeting, so that you're unprepared to make a
But
vote.
if you have a conflict and you abstain ahead of time, then the alternate would come into play, correct?
Correct. And if I found you were a constant person who abstained from vote after vote after vote, you most likely will receive a phone call from me.
And none of us wants that.
Get off the fence, right?
Want to be?
Okay.
I confess I've never taken a roll call vote.
The roll call vote is when you just go down person by person.
Oh, okay.
And saying yes or no. The voice votes are when everyone's chiming in at one time, what you usually do when you adjourn or act on the minutes.
All right.
So really, the regular vote is technically a roll call vote. We just don't have 50 people, so you don't have to.
Right. And the secretary?
And when voice call was really unclear and there was lots of yeas,
Sure.
and that's when you'll start to see the roll call, so the secretary can get the vote correct.
Okay. And the secretary would be Marty.
And the what? I'm sorry.
Who would the secretary be? Right. So most of our votes then are voice votes, but you're limiting them to adjourning a meeting, opening a hearing, closing a hearing.
Well, as this is written, roll call votes will be taken on all the real items on your agenda, all the development applications, all the long-range plans. You would go down the line and say yes or no one by one.
Okay, then
We do voice votes on, adjourning a meeting, opening a hearing, closing a hearing, or acting on the minute.
well, in that case, the second sentence of number 1 is incorrect then. Because if I go down the line and say, we just need to.
Yeah, Marty isn't the one that's calling the names out usually. It's
We just need to work on that, like, if necessary, or if it's unclear, then we need to do that.
Right, because I think if you say all those in favor and 4 of us raise our hands, she knows who we all are. That's,
Right.
Is that called on by the chair or called on by the secretary?
That would be, could be either. And if Marty hasn't got a clear idea, she's going to...
I can't remember us doing a roll call vote.
Right.
Since the 6 months I've been here. Have we?
I don't remember in the last 15 years.
I mean, I think we've had some things we probably should have had a roll call vote on, if these rules apply. But
or when our note taker wasn't clear as to who it was, and it was like, all right, who was it? And because it always got written down as these people were in favor, and these people.
I think we need to work on that language and we'll get it done.
I'm going to jump to section 10, which is the types of decisions. I think this is something that all of you are relatively familiar with, and something that we go over with you during orientations as well. But the administrative decisions, or if it complies with code, you really do need to approve. And then also the legislative decisions, which are discretionary.
What about voluntary conditions that the applicant agrees to?
We did not put this in the handbook, but I think with the administrative decisions, you have had some success recommending conditions, pretty much with a lot of your parks where you've asked for additional playgrounds or green space. When you make those suggestions, sometimes you get some traction with them, sometimes you don't. But didn't put that in the handbook because that's really just a suggestion. There's nothing that's ever preventing you from making a suggestion.
Okay.
But meaning if he makes a suggestion or somebody makes a suggestion, they agree, and here we'll do that, and we make a motion, then it then becomes
it's still
effective in the decision.
We word it as it may be a condition, but it's the developer has agreed to. So it's very clear that it's voluntary. Okay. It's their choice, because at the end of the day, if it meets code, you still need to approve it.
Okay. But so once if they agree on it and it's does it have the force of law or no? Can they then just go back and say, sorry, I'm not going to do it?
Well, ultimately, what we do is a recommendation anyway. So,
well, that's true.
We would recommend that.
Okay, so all that verbiage will be then passed to the council, who would then approve it, and then it will become the force of law?
It turns into a lot of times an ordinance condition, but it's not a very enforceable condition.
Yeah, we'd say they voluntarily agreed to. Could I go enforce it? Yes. Would they maybe comply? Yes. If they filed suit against us, would we win? I'm not sure.
Okay.
It could go either way. It could be they voluntarily did it, and now they're kind of reneging, but that's why it was written in there. So we could win potentially legally in that one, but if you get to the strict interpretation of the code, we wouldn't have a leg to stand on in court.
We haven't run into that situation. Usually, someone will be before the council, they'll agree to do something. And to date, we've seen those changes on the plans before the permits are issued.
And part of it is they want to come back and build again, and they may require rezoning. It's minimal investment for them to add a small playground set somewhere.
That's some good faith.
I've seen the other way around too, but
I don't know that I would add that in here. That doesn't mean you can't still make a suggestion. Section 11 gets into open meetings law. So all meetings can be broadcast, they can be recorded. Closed session, just really referencing the general statute there. Very limited opportunity really for planning and zoning board to go into closed session, but there is the possibility that you could do that if you needed to consult with the attorney on something. I think the Other time that you have that option is if you were going to be discussing an award you're handing out and you wanted to have it be a surprise. So I think that those are really only the two instances where that could potentially come into play for you. And then emails, those of you that have been in orientation sessions know that I always like to talk about the emails, being careful about what you put in those and making sure that you don't reply to all, because email correspondence between board members is considered a meeting and technically a violation of open meetings law. So always, if we send you an email, if you want to reply to all, just reply directly to us. Otherwise, you could be in violation of open meetings.
I was wondering, in terms of completeness, do we need to have a section about these meetings will always be in person as opposed to being, let's say, if I'm in India and I want to participate, not having the ability to conference in, or is that something allowed, not allowed?
We could add that to the policies. You guys could discuss that and decide if that's something that you need.
You do like a remote call-in?
Yeah, I mean,
we do have alternates who have the ability to be here in person as well, which the town council, who does sometimes allow some of that remote call-in, they don't have the option of alternates.
And I was going to say that town council and on other policy from me has a similar policy in that they're allowed to video conference in and listen and kind of participate, but they have no voting rights if they're remote. But if you wanted to listen and then have a conversation, you could. But just keep in mind that all of our, this is live streamed currently, so if you wanted to listen, if you're out of the country, you could. But what I don't remember is if they get credit for attendance or not.
And that's the point I was on.
That's the part that I don't remember, is whether or not.
Secretary says no.
I don't know whether town council gets credit. I know here, if you try to listen, our current policy is you would not receive credit, but I don't know what councils is off the top of my head.
Maybe it's something we should perhaps discuss. Especially,
I think
If the majority of you want us to look into it and propose something to you to come back with, we could do that.
I mean, we've done it in the past, but we followed, I think, as Courtney said, that, people could participate in the discussion and listen, but not vote. So the only question is whether that would count as an attendance or not.
Yeah, that's what and I don't have a problem not voting, but counting as attendance, especially when we currently have the policy of 2 absentees being what is allowed during the period, or is it during a year? I don't remember. Is it 4 during the period or 4 during the year?
Year.
4 within a calendar year.
Okay.
I mean, there is the other thing. If you've got 2 people say want to do that, one person, it gets kind of difficult to manage and a little bit disruptive. But I don't think it should be a policy. I think we should just.
I mean, that's the point of the office, right? I mean,
yeah. So, anybody else got any strong feelings on that?
You can listen to the live stream.
Yeah, that's true.
And people have also.
Yeah, I mean, when I had a bad year in 2012, I missed January's meeting because it was I was still in the hospital with my back surgery. February's meeting, I was still not really able to get up and last. And then August and September. August, my son was in the ICU. In September, no, I made September's, but October's I missed because he had to go back into the hospital. And I got hit up by one of the town council people at the time saying, well, you missed 4 council meetings.
It happens.
And so some leeway was given there, but at least I have gotten some flack over the years. It's like, well, you missed 3 meetings. I'm like, okay.
Well, so from where I sit, and I'm certainly not insensitive to work schedules, family life, etc. But it can be disruptive to some of the key decisions.
I agree.
When somebody's not here for all the meetings and then shows up to vote, and they've really not participated at all. I have seen people abuse it over the years, where you can miss up to 4 basically, and they have opted, to take 4. To me, when you're volunteering for this board, when you're booking your vacation, you know when your meeting is. So you run the risk then if you're taking a vacation that if there are life's, inconveniences and you end up missing additional ones, that happens. And so those are some risks that you kind of have to play. I personally think the policy is too liberal. I think that for somebody to be able to attend a portion of a meeting and get credit for a full time is problematic. I don't think it's fair to the other people sitting up there that are here meeting after meeting after meeting. So from where I sit, I think I have some fairly strong opinions. And recognizing that if there is some very special circumstance, you can have a conversation about it. But historically, absenteeisms are not special circumstances. It is choices that are being made as a general rule. And it's kind of like coming to work. You do have to show up.
I totally agree. Not having the ability to vote I totally agree with that. I was just asking about the ability. So, you could be somewhere, and if you attend the full session online, and you may not be able to speak, but you may be able to submit comments, whichever way. At least that person is making an effort to be for that session. 2 hours long, 4 hours long, 5 hours long. He's there, right? He may not be physically here, or she, right, for that matter. But they are making an effort to be there with the council, with this board for the entire duration. Then at the very least, they should get credit for attendance. I don't think they should get the vote, but at least they should get the credit for attendance. But that's something, we can talk about it, and you can at least find out what's the current policy.
I think it helps the absence be less disruptive.
Exactly.
But at the same time, if public's showing up, if staff is showing up, and half the people want to do it remotely, then you don't really have a meeting, right? And so I think supporting it and getting credit for it undermines the need to have a quorum here present.
Yep.
Right. I think that's the main concern.
Yeah, that's the balance to be had. Yeah.
And by the way, in the past, members of the board who've had a particular point they want to make, it's certainly possible for them to tell one of us, when you're there, would you at least mention that my feeling is this? So we can take that into account.
Yeah, we have received emails from board members, who are out of town for work. Because a lot of us, do travel for work. I'm not going to be there, but here are all my talking points.
Right. Yeah, understand.
And then that way we have them in writing. The chair can, provide them to the board as
Catherine's done that in the past.
But just don't send it to everybody. Right.
Don't send it to everybody. Send it to the chair. Right. You know what? I'm really glad that somebody's listening.
I know the difference between reply and reply all. I'm not sure what the problem is that people actually have with that. I've never accidentally replied to all.
Violation over something as simple as you discuss the minutes remotely. Just saying.
Okay.
It happens.
Good.
Okay, last thing, general conduct, attendance. I think we have touched on that one. And then just always remembering that you're representing the town and being cautious of that in your communications. And conflicts of interest, if you have a financial interest in something or a personal conflict of interest and you need to abstain, please let us know ahead of time so we can have an alternate stand in on that item. I think that is pretty much it. Any other questions, comments?
That's good. Thank you, Michelle.
We'll make some adjustments and bring this back to you then at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, so the next item is the 2018 February's activities newsletter. And again, the purpose of this newsletter is really to let everybody know what new projects are coming in, what projects there are, some that are approved administratively at the staff level, which projects have been approved, and then to kind of keep bringing up to speed on any town council items. Typically, with the exception of annexations, this board has also seen those to bring up to speed on where those are and just provide little tidbits of information. So we did have a new multifamily development submitted. It's in the Town Hall Commons area. McCrimmon Parkway, sorry, it's late, and I totally forgot the name of the road. Town Hall Drive North Extension and McCrimmon Parkway. The Waterwalk Hotel, that was just approved at the staff level, and of course the special use permit for the Shiloh Crossing Shopping Center, including the residents of the Shiloh Crossing. The two were really in tandem. Both those were approved, and the rezoning for the parking lot associated with the historic Christian church was also approved by council. We give a little blurb here for the land use plan update that's also sent to council. So that's really kind of help inform them, but I think y'all are clearly aware that that process has started. But those are just kind of little tidbits. As a quick reminder, there is a link down here on the bottom that takes you directly to the interactive map, so you can see where all of these projects are located. I've been asked multiple times if it's possible to add addresses. If I have one location, it's easy to do, but sometimes we have multiple submittals and there's just not enough room. So for consistency, just take a look at the link, or if you really are unsure, give us a call and we can kind of help you out as well. That's the latest and greatest for the newsletter. Do y'all have any questions at all?
I was going to ask where the Waterwalk Hotel is, but I think you told me I should go and look at the link.
The Winter Walk Hotel.
I said you're also welcome to ask me any questions, and the Waterwalk Hotel is located next to the, it's in the Shiloh Crossing subdivision as well, or development as well. And it's right next to the Homes to Suites that's currently under construction.
And is there water there?
No, that is just their brand name.
Okay.
The Waterwalk. They're called Waterwalk Hotel Apartments, so they're long-term. They're a high-end version of extended stay hotels.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you. That's it?
That is it.
Item 11.
I could chime in and just remind everyone that there is an opportunity for board training on April 5th. I've had a couple of you take advantage of that. It's a UNC School of Government training in Raleigh focusing on legislative decisions. I'm not positive there's still room, but as of a week ago, we got another email blast from them and there were still spots available. So if anyone else is interested, let us know. We could try and set
You said April 5th?
April 5th in Raleigh, yes.
Yeah, if you're able to make it with your work schedule, I strongly encourage you to take those type of opportunities when the School of Government offers them.
I just checked the interactive development map using my phone, and it actually works, so kudos on that.
You sound surprised.
Oh, the old one, it didn't work.
Yeah, well, I mean, the interactive map should have always worked. Well, the old link on there, I just redid.
I mean, that map itself just would kill your phone. It wasn't workable to try to use, but it actually came up quite nicely, and I could even see the plan.
Yeah, sometimes when you went through the old website before, which I think is kind of how it was routing, that was a bit painful. So, but I just updated the link on there. The only other thing before we move on to board member comments is a quick reminder that the transportation fair is on March the 22nd. It is located in Morrisville Fire Station 1, which is the fire station next door, and it's from 4 to 7. There will be a lot of neat information out there. regarding a variety of transportation, both at state level, local level, and then of course transportation plan. So I encourage each of you to swing by. I think there's popcorn there too, probably. See, so you can really, if you time it right, you can get popcorn for dinner for free.
From the new diet.
And I think I even said that there may be some water bottles there too. So I mean, an entire meal can be provided.
Healthy meal, that too.
And if you have small children, I mean, it can be a family.
There might be a fire engine there.
There are some activities there will be some activities for kids there as well.
So I wanted to put a little shout out for that.
Then you're not dressing like a clown, are you?
I'm not.
Okay.
You're not.
I think we talked about a mascot for a long time. It was like a traffic cone or something, but like it'd be like a moving or non-movable one probably. That's really it on my end. So I'm going to turn it back over to the chairman.
Thank you. So, board comments. Okay.
No, thank you very much for the hard work.
I mean,
Got nothing, but we have a lot of stuff. Thank you guys for all your work too. There's a lot of stuff going into this.
Really, Dylan did a lot of work. So to say that I probably provided him 500 comments to toss in there would probably be an understatement. So
and he's still smiling.
He's still smiling. He really enjoyed it, apparently. So, but yeah, he really deserves a lot of credit for the text change because he really went in there and started making it happen.
right. Lee.
It was good, and that's all my comments I got.
Catherine. Rob.
Good, thank you.
I have one comment. We didn't make a big deal of this at the last month, and we should have done. Congratulations to Harleen being officially made the vice chairperson. That's it. Item 14.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Do
I
I have
second it.
a motion and a second? Do I need a roll call? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.